So welcome to the studios of We Don't Have Time here in Brussels at the 10th Annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency, which of course is hosted by the International Energy Agency. Governments are here to share ideas, to learn from experts how to raise ambition on energy efficiency and develop innovative solutions and finance. And this is critical, of course, to the lives of citizens, sustainable and affordable economic development, and last but not least, for dealing with climate change at speed and on time in the 10th anniversary year of the landmark Paris Agreement. In a moment, we're going to hear from four excellent guests about what will be a game changer for Europe and perhaps beyond, especially for the urgency of decarbonizing industry by providing a way to exit from fossil fuel boilers used to generate heat across so many key processes in European industry, and by also saving, not wasting, heat. We're talking about sectors like the pharmaceutical companies, paper production, food processing, textiles, metals, you name it. All of European industry requires colossal amounts of heat to run different processes and then temperatures. This breakthrough we're talking about, this new opportunity, is called SUSHEAT. And SUSHEAT has emerged from the European Commission's Horizon Science Programme, and it has involved 15 partners, including academics and private companies in 11 countries, mainly in the European Union, but also involving Norway and that small island developing state off the west coast of Europe, the United Kingdom. I can say that because I'm British. SUSHEAT is about new high-temperature industrial heat pumps. It's about a novel waste heat storage system, and it's about solar power. It's about artificial intelligence, and it's about much, much more. I don't want to dwell too much on this intro, but we know from the International Energy Agency and also from the World Energy Outlook that basically benefits of energy efficiency have been stalling in recent years, not just in Europe, but also worldwide. So how do we get things back on track? Maybe SUSHEAT might have a few answers, and some of our guests here might some other answers, including from the Commission with things like the Clean Industrial Deal and many other initiatives underway. So let's finally thank RTDS, who are based in Vienna, Austria, who are coordinating the outreach for SUSHEAT, for their support and involvement. And okay, let's meet our first speaker. So Arne Høeg is the CEO of Enerin. It's an industrial heat pump company based in Oslo, Norway, and it's part of the SUSHEAT project. He is a mechanical engineer, an entrepreneur with 10 patents and designs in the market, including industrial heat pumps, water turbines, and subsea drones, which is extremely interesting. I never heard about that before, Arne, but we can't go into those right now. Okay. Arne, can you briefly explain to the audience the current situation in European industry in terms of how they generate heat and how much of this is wasted, and why we need to go further and faster and higher in terms of how we manage this? We're going to talk about heat pumps, basically.
Yeah. So everything we use, everything we eat and drink is typically made in factories that use industrial heat. They use it typically in the form of steam or high temperature water. Some use also, let's say, other ways to transfer the heat. But the thing is that in total, industry uses about 1/5 of the world's energy consumption. But all that heat is not going really into the product. It's used in the processes and then it's wasted. Almost all of that heat is wasted to the environment through chimneys and to river water or whatever. And it would be very nice if we could recycle that heat, reuse it at high temperatures through a heat pump. And today, let's say 3/4 of all that heat is generated by fossil fuels like gas boilers or similar. And if we start looking into industrial heat pumps, well, there are a few on the market. They can deliver like 100 degrees Celsius, 120, but the industries don't need just 120. They need like 180 degrees for drying processes, maybe for distillation and for chemical reactions in the pharmaceutical industry that needs to take place at a certain temperature in order to make the product. And that has led to heat pumps being quite expensive because they have to be designed to each individual customer, integrated in big projects, very costly. And that is why we started this SUSIT project to be able to industrialize a heat pump that can go into the really high temperatures like 250 degrees and recycle heat at any temperature going into these processes at a low cost.
Okay, Arnie, that's very good for setting that up. So we do have industrial heat pumps in Europe, but they're at lower temperatures or they achieve lower temperatures. And with the SUS heat, you can get to 250 degrees centigrade, which is starting to open up the possibility of industrial heat pumps to more and more industries in the European Union. Do you think the widespread deployment of a heat pump that can hit that temperature, plus the other things we're going to hear about in a second from Sylvia, could reduce what, 10%, 20% of European industry emissions? Is there a number in your head?
Yeah, I think we'll be at around 3%, 3 to maybe 5% of European emissions from deployment of high temperature heat pumps in the industry alone. And then obviously they can be used for other applications as well. So increasing that.
Okay. Thanks, Arnie. Stay with us. That's really good. So we've now explored a part of the SUSIT story, which is the new heat pump with this amazing performance. And by the way, I understand it can recycle heat as low as say minus 30 degrees or around that, right up to 250 in seconds. And I know you don't like this, Arnie, but some people call it the rocket. So maybe NASA will take an interest. Okay, let's now go to another part of the jigsaw puzzle in the SUSIT story and bring in another member of the SUSIT team to perhaps expand on this picture that we're building. Sylvia Treverson is an assistant professor in thermal technologies for industrial decarbonization, and she's based at KTH, the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Sweden. Sylvia, SUSIT's not just about an industrial heat pump, it's also about a system of remarkable inventions. Can you tell the audience, for example, about this novel heat storage system that forms part of it, and any other aspects that we should be aware of that help all these moving parts, I know they're not really moving parts, but that's shorthand, to actually all kind of work together to deliver very special technological breakthrough?
Sure. Thank you, Nick, for the nice question and introduction, first of all. Yes, well, SUSIT, as you said, it's not just about the heat pump. Of course, the heat pump is the central core of it, but then we do have a number of things around it. To start with, as you said, the storage. It's basically a novel thermal energy storage. So you can think of it as a battery, but instead of storing electricity, we are actually storing heat. So it's heat that we are storing. We are doing it in basically a material that it's called a phase change material or latent storage, which basically means that we are actually melting and freezing a material so that we have good control on the temperature that we can deliver. And this goes back to the requirement of the industry. And the whole point of doing that, it's basically that we can be as flexible as we can. So we want to electrify the industry, for example, but we want to do that whenever the prices, for example, for the electricity are actually low, whenever we have abundance of renewable in the grid. We don't want to do it at any given time. But then it's a lot of other things that we are considering in SUSIT. For example, we are looking into integration of solar, and that's a key component into that. Solar thermal that can support the decarbonization. And here it's a lot about understanding where it makes more sense to have heat pumps, where it makes more sense to have solars, but also when the two things can go together and help each other, basically. And then we are also looking into AI, as you said at the beginning. I mean, basically, these systems are becoming more and more complex from a technology perspective, and there are different things coming in all together. So basically, in that sense, intelligence or smart, let's say, control systems can actually help us in managing all of these different technologies in the best way. So I think these are the key additional aspects that we are bringing in the context of SaaS heat and helping the heat pump, basically.
Now, just coming back, it's not a theoretical product or project that we're talking about here. This has actually had real life testing. I know you've been testing at KTH, but it's been taken out with Arnie and the team, and I think yourself, Sylvia, to Pelagia, which is a very large fish processing factory in Norway, one of the bigger, if not the biggest in Norway. And they have a lot of demand for heat because they have to do things like literally sort of like boil and cook the remains of fish in a watery substance to boil it down rather quickly into animal feed, I understand. So it has been used. This is the circular economy in action, by the way. We just have to point out when you start talking about fish processing. So Sylvia, maybe you could just quickly comment on what those findings have shown from the real life testing in Norway.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think Arne could actually give much more details about that, but in principle,
I'm going to come to Arnie in a second.
Sure, perfect. Then, yeah, I can just comment that as far as I know, that works pretty good. And of course, in the scope of the project that you were saying before, we are actually going to test this. We are currently building up basically all of the facility to test the whole integrated system. So not just the heat pump as it is in the fish facility that you mentioned before. And there, the scope of the testing, it's of course not just to test the heat pump in itself, but basically to gather as much insight as possible on the integrated system. So validate the key component, but also understanding how they can interact to each other, how they can work together, and how basically all of the transients that could happen, all of the different difficulties that you might have, and how to react to those. So that's what is going to happen actually, primarily in 2026. That's when we plan to do all of this testing. But yeah, for what I know, when it comes to the Pelagia case, that's actually going on pretty smooth and working in the context of the requirements that they have in there.
Yeah, Arnie, just briefly then, the heat pump at Pelagia, it did what it says on the tin, yeah?
Yeah.
It hit those temperatures in rapid time. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so what we see is that that when you process the leftovers from what you want to eat from the fish, then everything is changing all the time. So we see that the available waste heat can one moment it's 90 degrees, the next it's like 40 degrees, and maybe tomorrow it's like cold seawater, Arctic seawater as the heat source. And then they also need varying steam pressure. So sometimes very high steam pressure, sometimes they can do with a little bit lower. And what we see in real life operation of the heat pump is that well, the heat pump adapts. It's very robust to those fluctuating situations and can adapt to whatever temperatures they need and whatever source temperature they have.
Okay. That's good. I forgot, yeah, because heat pumps are also not just about the temperature, they're about pressures. The pressures when you're processing all kinds of things in industry also change all the time. I mean, that's why the fossil fuel boiler is unbelievably good, except it just causes climate change. So that's why we have to change it. Super. All right, let's just stay with us because now we're going to go to our other wonderful guests. So let me first Paul, turn to you, if that's all right. And this is nothing to do with gender balance, Rosalinda. This is because I have a narrative in my head. And Paul is the Director General of the European Heat Pump Association, based in Brussels, here where we are, and represents the voice of this sector, including both domestic and industrial heat pump manufacturers. So, Paul, can you tell us a little bit more about this industrial heat pump story in Europe? When I try to Google all this, I often see a lot about domestic heat pumps, but I don't see a lot about industrial. It kind of touches on it here and there. They sometimes come in the same package. There's a heat pump accelerator, isn't a platform, which I know you're involved in. And it seems to be a lot about domestic, and sort of industrial heat pumps are sort of mentioned, but I'm not sure. But what's going on? And also, we clearly need them. So what's going on, and what kind of barriers do you think are up there in terms of the wider deployment of these technologies? And what are you doing as an organization to try and address these?
Very good. Couple of questions there. I'll try and hit them all one by one. So first of all, I think what's really useful about the industrial heat pump, or what's quite current about it, is it addresses a couple of the challenges we have in Europe. So the competitiveness. So Europe, as an energy importing continent, or as an energy importing society, effectively, needs to understand how it can be competitive. And there is no real competitive journey by saying, well, we're going to use expensive imported fossil fuels. So then you think, well, how do we take advantage of what we have? We have an abundant amount of renewable electricity, and we need to convert that to heat. And one of the things that the industrial heat pump now does that maybe wasn't quite so current 10 years ago is allows industrial factories that have waste heat. So where you have a process, it might be a cooling. So most food production will end up cooling at some point of that. And that traditionally was just wasted at the back of a factory. Their services would have a large industrial chiller, which would dump all of that heat into the atmosphere. And now what we see is all of the previous chiller manufacturers now have an extra set of pipes coming out the side of their chillers, which recover hot water or steam. And what that allows them to do is effectively discount the need to put a boiler in, or to have a boiler plant beside their chilling plant. So it recovers the heat from freezing and from cooling, and uses that, particularly in the food industry, for providing heat and hot water and cooking and so on. So things like breweries, where you have to cool and heat the beer at different parts of the process, instead of cooling it with electricity-driven chillers and then heating it with boilers, you just recover that, stick it in a warm water tank, and then use it when you need it. So it allows effectively a huge increase in efficiency, but it also allows you to switch from imported fossil fuels for your energy use. Now you can use an indigenous renewable electricity, and you can do it in such a way that's quite flexible. So that's maybe the first thing. In terms of the opportunity, so Europe uses, I think, in the region of 2,000 terawatt hours, which is a very large amount of energy for heat and industry.
How many football pitches is that?
I have no idea. It's a very large number of oil tankers. If you were to picture that, a fleet of them. And about between a third and 40% of that is below 200 degrees. So even before we talk about 250 degrees, and that's in pharma and food processing and fibers and anything under that temperature. And all of that can be decarbonized made more energy efficient, more cheaper, more competitive, with recovering the waste energy. Yeah. And if you just think very simply about a factory, and you put a dome over the factory and you have a pipe of energy going in, it has to come out some way. And it's currently coming out in the very vast majority of European industry as waste heat.
Yep.
So what the industrial heat pump allows you to do is capture that waste heat and put it back in at the beginning of the process, and therefore you get the circular economy. So the opportunity is, I don't know, in the region of 700 terawatt hours by 2050, which is 300 megawatts a month. These are a lot of numbers from now to 2050. So it's a huge industry. And when we think about technology adoption, we have this thing called the S curve, which, you have the early adopters and the majority and the late bloomers. And we think about that, we're at the very early stage at the bottom of the S right now.
Right.
So a lot of our manufacturers in the industrial heat pump sector are deploying technology in the first of a kind factory. So the first dairy, the first sugar factory, the first pasta factory, the first paper factory and fiber factory, and so on. And what needs to happen now is they need to do more and more, standardize. It becomes a production process, and modular and small, and becomes even cheaper to install. And that makes it even more competitive than it is currently. But what we do also see is places like Norway, France, where, the Iberian Peninsula, where electricity is relatively cheap to gas, we're seeing a booming market. And I think that's really good, because that allows those early adopters to deliver that. And there's a lot of innovation funding from the Commission, which Rosalind is going to talk about, that allows manufacturers and customers get together, learn that little bit of a journey that needs to go from the appliance works, the factory works, and put the little bit in between to deploy it in different technology areas.
Mm.
And to your third question, what are we doing about it? The thing we're most focused on right now is to try and ensure we widen the understanding of industrial heat pumps, because no one even heard of these 5 years ago, in terms of everyone had a chiller, which was an industrial heat pump in a different way. So we're trying to widen the understanding by doing a lot of events and by communicating the opportunity of industrial heat pumps, but we're also trying to partner with all of these industries. So we last year we did a piece of work with the engineers in the paper industry, with the engineers from the heat pump industry, and they got together and said, well, here's our challenges. This is what our industry looks like. Here's how we use heat. Here's our temperatures. And the engineers from the heat pump industry were able to say, okay, well, we've got solutions for these, and they work together. And now they're in deployment phase. And what we're doing this year is we're working on food and beverage. We're working on the with the drinks industry through that, and also with the Man-Made Fibers Association, so that we can start to work with kind of European level associations to really get into the detail of the different industries and the different potential. Because the scale of this potential is massive. The scale of the opportunity is massive, and the scale of the benefits for European competitiveness, for European energy security, and really importantly for European climate goals is huge. And we need to get into the space now where we solve the little problems that are there, make sure everyone knows about them, and then get on and deliver.
Right. And something like SUSHEAT is that next step, in a sense, not just a heat pump, but something that also brings in, capturing heat that can be used whenever you need it. And so a kind of ecosystem, again, with the AI and the condensing solar linking in, you're creating an ecosystem that is perhaps more flexible than just a heat pump on its own, no matter what temperatures it hits, right? So
Correct.
is this a kind of, would the association welcome this kind of development,
Yeah,
and the investment of the Commission in the Horizon project?
Yeah, it's really important. And it's really important to have this sort of early level funding to solve some of those problems, but also solve the next problem, which is flexibility and thermal storage. One of the real advantages of industrial heat pumps, and a lot of them go in with large water tanks, is so that they can heat and cool together when energy prices are cheap or when they're available with the sun. And that goes from industrial right down to commercial and even domestic. That this technology is a technology that enables electrification because it's flexible.
But there's a reality check, isn't there? Which is the upfront costs of industrial heat pumps and even new ones with funky systems, right, to be more flexible and hit higher temperatures. There's an upfront cost. Are there enough trained people to manage them? I was reading something from the energy efficiency movement that they brought out yesterday, saying there were like 4 areas of challenges, which were higher upfront costs, not enough skilled labor. Some businesses are a bit confused about, oh, it's got an IT component and it's got this component. Oh gosh, it's all a bit confusing. I don't know if that's paranoia or whether it just need to hire somebody to do it, but
yeah,
there are some challenges.
There's kind of 4 key challenges. One is the cost of electricity versus gas. Not in every market. So particularly where there's large amounts of hydro or large amounts of solar and wind together, you get relatively cheap electricity. So we see it active in those markets, but it's not active in other markets. And the reason it's not active in those markets is, even being 3 times more efficient, if your electricity price is 5 times more expensive than gas, it kills the business case. Right. So that's probably the largest barrier, we'll say. The second one is it's a young industry, so the knowledge is not there. And that's why we're working really hard to try and widen the scope of knowledge.
Right.
As part of that, I think there is a skills-based requirement that needs to develop. The industry needs to standardize. It's got, the technology works. It's not complicated technology, but it's complicated in how it integrates with different industries. So I think that's important. And finally, when it comes to the high up cost, it's still very competitive. And when businesses look at an investment, whether it's a boiler plant, a chiller plant, an industrial heat pump, whatever it is, they need a service out of this device. And they look at, well, what are the options and what's the least cost to deliver me a reliable service over the lifetime. So they often see OPEX and CAPEX as part of the same equation. They look at it over 5 or 10 years and make a decision on the basis of the return on that investment.
Right. But there are ways if the return is not as fast as they'd like it, there are things that can be done by national governments or by the EC or whatever to smooth that journey for the early adopters, right? And then you get mass production and mass acceptance, and then everybody's happy and the lambs are dancing and the soft music's playing and the petals are falling. Everything's fine, right? So it can be done, right?
So one of the things we looked at last year is we looked at the ecosystem of investment supports for industrial heat pumps across Europe. Most countries have some form of supports. And that really helps that early adopter phase, that new industry that's not really comfortable with it. Well, it's a very good business case because we've got this extra support. So let's really go after it.
Right. Okay, let's turn to our last wonderful guest, Rosalinda van der. Now, I always have a problem with this last name because Vlies?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, not bad, right? Good. Okay, get a little gold star there from Susseed for getting that one right. But she's with the director at DG Energy. Responsible for, there's a whole list of things here. I don't know how you do it. Transition, consumers, that's just a few people, isn't it? Energy efficiency and innovation at the European Commission. That's a hell of a portfolio. But everyone's got them now, haven't they? I see there's the guy called McGrath from Ireland. He's got this, justice, consumers, and something. I mean, it's a whole another list as well. It's incredible.
Yeah, actually, I come from the Clean Planet Directorate.
I know.
So I need to adapt a bit to the title. But there's a certain logic to it there, Nick.
So, Rosalind, you're in a new role at the Commission. Just very, very briefly, how's it going and what's the aim? Because for people that don't know.
No, I mean, it's amazing, I have to say, even though the name is not very catchy. But basically what we are doing is to make sure that we have a citizen-centered energy transition. Because we believe that, we will not be successful with our clean energy transition if we don't have the people on board.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, one of the aims. The second aim is that we want the energy transition to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
You said, we want a just transition. So we want to make sure that we support not only the people, but also the regions. For instance, there are coal regions in transition.
Mm-hmm.
There are islands in the EU that also need to have a fair energy transition. And then we are, of course, focusing on energy efficiency, because it's very clear that, energy efficiency is a key pillar of the energy transition to be successful there. And lastly, we focus on innovation, because we believe that Europe needs to be a front runner in terms of innovation.
Mm-hmm.
We already are when it comes to energy efficient solutions, but we still need innovation to make sure that when you have existing technologies, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes cheaper and more affordable. So that's in a nutshell what we are aiming to do at this long name director.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Now, the Commission and the Member States of the EU have various initiatives aimed at decarbonising industrial emissions, including the Clean Industrial Deal. There's lots of others. There's an innovation fund. I think I tracked about 5 different projects that somehow fed into this. I was going to mention them earlier, but my intro was way too long. But tell me, having heard about Susseed, do you think this is a development that could play a role in the Clean Industrial Deal? And if so, how can the Commission help transform these kinds of innovations into commercially impactful reality? I think this is a key question because I think many countries struggle. This is always a complaint in the UK. Oh, we invented penicillin, but who got the benefits? I think it was the Americans actually.
Yeah.
So there are always these stories. How can the Commission do that? Because it's bridging that gap, isn't it, between the idea, the innovation, and then the reality?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, first of all, we are really, really proud still that in Europe we have the largest publicly funded program for research and innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So the Success Project also is a Horizon Europe project. And I think we can be really proud of that in the EU, that also from the public side, we invest so much in maintaining European leadership in innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And in the second mandate, our president of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, she basically said we need to place research and innovation at the heart of our European economy for our European competitiveness. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it's very clear that we are very good in doing science. We are a scientific powerhouse, but we're not good into translating this into the commercial successes for our European companies. Mm-hmm. And this is why this is now a big focus of the current European Commission, College of Commissioners. We still have our Green Deal, and we will stay the course, even though we may call it a clean deal now.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this huge focus now to make sure that we link the decarbonization of our European economy with strengthening the competitiveness of our European industry. So it's basically two sides of the same coin.
Right.
And there, I think we can do several things at a European level to support this moving from research and development into scaling up and actual deployment of the solutions inside the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first strength that we have is that we provide regulatory stability inside the European Union. So we have, for instance, on energy efficiency, we have very clear long-term targets, collective targets of what we want to achieve as a European Union.
Mm-hmm.
And these longer-term targets also provide kind of like a regulatory stability for companies to invest, for instance, in heat pumps, including the industrial heat pumps.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is really a strength of the European Union. Then we also, apart from this regulatory certainty and giving a longer term perspective of where we want the European Union to go,
Mm-hmm.
we also, of course, have our European Union investment programs, not only in research and innovation, but also in deployment.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, for instance, the LIFE program, Innovation Fund you mentioned, we have Invest EU. So we have a lot of opportunities, at the EU level already to accelerate the deployment.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we also feel that we need to work much more closely together also with the private sector. So that's why, we have public-private partnerships established where we are putting together, EU money together with, companies that co-invest into the solutions. And I think that is really a way forward.
Mm-hmm.
And we are also continuing to look into how we can bridge the so-called valley of death. We recently published a startup and scale-up strategy for the European Union,
Mm-hmm.
where we really want to support, in particular, the young innovative companies to stay
Mm-hmm.
inside the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot going on, but obviously we need to continue on the same path. So to provide the regulatory stability, supporting also the industry with clear rules, and at the same time continue to invest,
Mm-hmm.
not only at the EU level, but also then at the national level and bring in the private investments.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe just to as a last point,
Yes.
point out that we have some new policy measures also in the pipeline on the energy field. We are
Okay.
working on a heating and cooling strategy precisely to address some of the barriers that Paul just mentioned.
Mhm.
We are working on an electrification strategy for the European Union, again, to address the barriers that are there and to provide still this longer term stability for our European companies. So I think these are really, great things in the pipeline
Right.
as well.
Yes. Cooling being absolutely critical right now because everything's getting warmer.
Including here in your studio, by the way.
And the studio here is quite warm too. We have to blame the International Energy Agency for that. So, yeah. Okay. Look, thank you very much indeed. It is quite, I think, hard for an ordinary person to actually keep up with the amount of legislation that's pouring out of the Commission. And I don't mean pouring in a derogatory way. It literally is a sign of intent to achieve something quite special, especially the complicated world that we have with some former partners rolling back on so many things. And yeah, the EU standing firm and with a strong spine is a critical moment, I think, for the world. So
If I
yeah,
may say something about that, Nick, because I mean, I think, you can say, oh, so many rules in Europe, but actually, the European industry is asking to provide this certainty.
Mhm.
And the advantage of having a European rule is that it creates a level playing field for the entire, European Union territory. So, I mean,
it's norms and standards, isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly,
I mean, it's
exactly.
exactly what, everybody needs to know. There's a basement point at which you cannot go below. You can do better if you want to,
Exactly.
but there needs to be some basic floor, right, up on which we can all stand and jump as high as possible from it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me, we've got a little bit more time left. I think we've got about 12 minutes or something. I mean, we could talk for hours. I could talk for hours about Sussex because I think it's so absolutely fascinating. And I love the creativity involved in this and the potential. But let's just try and, we can all join in here. I know it's a little bit hard here. Some of our people from the very north of Europe, but I can. So if there's any problem, I can just pass that on. But let's talk about, well, one thing, Arnie, maybe you can just come in on this. So 250 is where you're at as a ceiling with the current project, but you're already looking at a higher heat pump, aren't you?
Yeah.
Underway?
So together with Sylvia and KTH and a few other companies like Kyoto Group, we are also investigating combining our high temperature heat pumps with even higher temperature storage, up to 400 degrees Celsius. And even though a smaller share of industry uses temperatures as high as 400 degrees, that means a very high ceiling for energy storage. So that means that we can actually fill up the buffer of thermal energy storage with the heat pump when the renewable electricity is abundant, and then we can use the heat whenever the customer needs the heat. So it avoids the need for peaker boilers and so on, so that we can use the heat pump for a larger share of the energy use, and be even more flexible in terms of grid stabilization. And we need less grid build out, less transformers, less of everything.
Interesting. So the idea there would be that you could actually, even with the existing heat pump, work on a thermal storage system that could store heat at 450 degrees centigrade, which again opens up to more companies, maybe not a hugely more massive market, but a significant market. And that's the key. Yeah. Okay. Sylvia, let's just come back to you just a little bit on this. I mean, it's hard to explain the importance of AI, because I think for a lot of people are still coming to grips with what it means. But from your perspective, this is a positive use of this technology because it's the ability to manage multiple systems at the same time?
Yes, that's exactly the case. So, while AI per se, it can be controversial and it's not always the best solution in that sense, but particularly when it comes to system like the ones we are trying to go for in the context of SaaS Heat, that's something that can definitely help in well, supporting us basically in understanding how these different technologies could actually play together and try to optimize them in different ways, and trying to, as you said, it's a very complex and multi-layered issue when it comes to actually addressing it in considering different contexts, from an industrial perspective, from the location perspective, from taxes and legislation perspective. So different things that you have to layer upon to understand what is the best fit in each of these cases. Yeah, these smart technologies could definitely help us in doing that, and playing together or working together. That's something that we are aiming for. When it comes to the practicality side, well, what we are actually doing in the context of the project is to use AI system, let's say, primarily on the control part of the system. So when to operate different things and how to coordinate that, how to do that in the best way whenever, for example, electricity is not only cheap but renewable. That's actually a critical point, making sure that we use renewable electricity in doing all of this transition in electrification. It's not just about using electricity for the sake of it. But yeah, that's I do believe it has a potential positive impact in all of this.
One thing that Arnie has said to me several times is this issue, and he alluded to it just slightly there, was how heat pumps and industrial heat pumps could help balance the grid. Because, I mean, it was like a couple of years ago, wasn't it, when there were articles in newspapers in Europe, the USA, and the UK, that some new wind farms and solar farms and things like that were waiting up to 10 years. I think in the UK it was 15, in America it was like 12. I don't remember what it was, but it was a long time just to plug in right to the grid, which seemed absolutely absurd. And I think Arnie has mentioned before, certainly when we were chatting some weeks ago, that you have the possibility of storing, say, surplus wind as storage to be used in factories and things like that. And that instead of, we need to go for renewables, right? But the demand for energy is so high that if we just try and go for renewables, the time it will take to connect them in means that a substantial amount of emissions have been emitted, whereas with the heat pump, working with all these different systems, could actually allow you to manage the grid much better. Arnie, I'm paraphrasing you a little bit, but I thought I'd ask these two experts here what they think.
So
Paul?
one of the things, you might talk about the grids package a little bit, but one of the things that's unique about this, particularly in industry, So if you've got a constrained grid and the grid says, well, we can't give you all of that power all of the time because for these 200 hours a year, there isn't quite enough available power. You could leave it, you put your heat pump in and it runs for 96% of the time, and you just rely on your backup gas for a couple of years until you build out that grid. And that flexibility of kind of a flexible demand connection, I think is the term they call it, gives an opportunity to add a significant more amount of flexible demand onto the system, which allows you then build out that local supply chain of renewables where there isn't as much transmission required because the local solar farm or wind farm connects into the local heat pump. And if it's not sunny and not windy and there isn't enough connection from somewhere else, you can say, well, we'll rely on the gas boiler for another 5 years or 7 years or 10 years. And particularly when we talk about industrial sites, that is, that's a unique thing that they have. They already have a boiler plant and it's probably end of life and it's probably, you could leave it there and standby mode for a few years. So that's an opportunity for kind of this idea of flexible demand. But the second part of the flexible demand is, if you add storage like in a Swiss Heat project, it allows you to think about, well, let's say we take an industrial heat pump and we run it really hard for the cheapest 4 or 6 or 8 hours of the day.
Mm-hmm.
We run it a little bit for the next, and then we don't run it for the most expensive 8 hours of the day. That brings down the cost of energy for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows the grid function more cohesively. It allows more electrons pass through the same wires, which means it's a lower cost per unit for every single citizen, industry, and otherwise. And as we add demand that's flexible, what it does is it fills up the troughs in available capacity, and it means you really use the asset much more comprehensively.
I think these are complex things, but policymakers need to know that it's not just a heat pump, it's not just storage, it's a system that can also go beyond just simply heating and cooling a factory's production system, right? That it's a bit like the dream of using electric car batteries as to power your house. It's offering that alternative vision of a kind of different kinds of sustainability in society. And I think that's quite fascinating. Somebody wanted me to ask about fossil fuel subsidies. I don't know whether I should be asking about them, but I see that they're at record levels. 16 years after the G7 said that they would phase out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. We never had them so high as they are right now. We know why they're there, but we also know that they do kind of have a habit of not leveling the playing field, if I can put it that way, between renewables and fossil fuels. Is it more complex than that? Because you just said to me, in those countries where they got cheap electricity, they can run away with heat pumps, but those with higher costs in gas can't. So if you took away the subsidy, the gas would be more expensive and even less likely to go for heat pumps. Sorry. So is fossil fuel subsidies a good or a bad thing in this context?
Well, I might paraphrase Mario Draghi when he said, "Everyone knows what needs to be done. They just don't know how to get elected thereafter." And that is the
That's
challenge.
a good line, yeah.
That you've got, particularly when we talk about lower income households, they get a lot of these fossil fuel subsidies, and the reason they get them is because we want this transition to be just.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is make sure that things like the new Social Climate Fund allows those lower income homes transition. Now, that's not just, it's not like fossil fuel subsidies don't just go to low income households, and there needs to be reform. And, how
they tend to go to the rich people because they use more of them, right? The more of those fuels, like the big SUV drivers.
They do tend to, yeah. But I suppose we do need to be cognizant of everyone in this, right, just in this transition. But it is a real challenge, and I think most policymakers would like to phase them out. Mm-hmm. I would say, but it's not as easy as just.
No, I realize that. Rosalinda?
I can quickly jump in here.
Yeah.
Maybe just also on the grid. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of attention, on more investments in the grids, big interconnectors, a lot of copper.
Yeah.
We actually know that if we focus more on the demand side and the demand flexibility, storage, and energy efficiency, we can save up to 35% of the grid investment that are currently planned.
Right.
So just by being, focusing more on demand and more on energy efficiency.
That's a really...
So that's great, investments that we can save. So that's great. On the fossil fuel subsidies,
Yeah.
I've actually some good news
Ah.
because we have the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which is, an amazing piece of legislation that will support the renovation of buildings throughout the European Union. It will need to be translated into national law in May next year, but, and here it comes, as of 1st of January this year, this piece of legislation already prohibits member states to provide subsidies for the fossil fuel boilers at homes.
Okay.
So great news.
All right.
Small steps, but
Well, there we go. And you heard it first on We Don't Have Time TV. Thank you very much, Rosalind. I think we have to round it up here, ladies and gentlemen. I really am so happy that Rosalind, you could join us. Paul, Sylvia, and Arnie could be with us too from the Susheat project. It really is special. I think you've got maybe a year and a half more to run, roughly, before you can fully launch this on a grateful world, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes.
And so thank you very much for being here. And we will talk soon, I'm sure. And we'd like to have an update on Susheat going forward and see whether, in fact, it does manage to get some support from the Commission to commercialize it. That would be interesting too. So thank you, Arnie. Thank you, Sylvia. Norway and Stockholm, Norway and Sweden, I should say. And thank you to our two wonderful guests here in the studio at the International Energy Agency in Brussels.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.
I think we have a very turbulent world at the moment. There is a lot of uncertainties with tariffs. There is wars in many places. But the climate change is also happening, and we cannot take a pause from that. So we need to stay firm. And that is where the energy efficiency plays a vital role. And that is what this is all about. And from AlphaVal perspective, we are firm. We are walking the talk ourselves. So we have moved our carbon neutrality target from 2030 to now 2027, and we will deliver on that. There's a lot of companies, there's a lot of governments that are still committed, and I think it's a relief for everybody to meet up and get some oxygen, that there are other companies as well, other governments that is also still hanging in there, and it gives oxygen to everybody, and I believe that the decarbonization journey is not being paused. We have to pull through, and I think everybody will leave with a lot of energy to walk that extra mile now. I think what we all can do, both from the industry, is to walk the talk ourselves. Like I say, AlphaVal, we are delivering on our scope 1 and 2 emission reductions, but it's also to be more vocal. We need to explain why this is so crucial. Climate change is not taking a pause, and we need to get together. So my call to action is we have an energy efficiency movement that is co-hosting this together with the European Commission. We have 600 members from the industry that has come on board in just 1 year. We need many more. So join the movement and make a difference by strengthening voice, by collaborating.
Well, I'm the Executive Director of the Sustainable Energy Finance Association. So we are here today because I think this is the best place for meeting policy. So policy meets investments at its highest level. And I think what is very important is that we need financing strategies that can really turn policy ambition to practical implementation for both energy efficiency, but also renovation, but it's also about our climate. Without targeted performance-based finance, we will miss renovation and our targets. It's not that we do not have money or budget. I think the budget exists, but we need these three things. We need project preparation, we need the risking, but it's also about regulatory coherence. Governments should really embed financing strategies inside the national climate plans. Number two, it's all about blended finance. So I think we need to be able to embed also and blend both public finance together with the risking strategies, but also making sure that we have other neutral, financial neutral, innovative financing models that we can blend for making renovation faster and quicker.
I'm the proud leader of the energy efficiency movement, and we are the partner to the IEA's 10th Energy Efficiency Conference. So the private sector is ready to invest at scale. Solutions are there, and now it's all about the how. how can we really scale up at speed energy efficient technologies, but also looking into other ways of how to unlock the finance. Energy as a service, for example. So from my side, it's about the stability from a policy framework perspective. But also on the private side, it's very important to have dedicated energy efficiency budgets that allows to invest and also accelerate at scale. And the third element is to bring energy efficiency at the strategic level to drive the progress within the company.
I'm here today because I brought the voice of young people worldwide. I brought their voice to the table. And this is because there's this belief that the role of young people is simply advocacy. And I want the participants and attendants of the conference to know youth are not just advocates. Our role is beyond being invited to conferences and speaking about energy efficiency or impact of climate change or the need for energy access. We have the local innovations. We have the skills, we have the passion. So it's very important that youths are meaningfully included in policy-making processes, in investment decisions, so that their project can be supported. And oftentimes you see that the project of these young persons are projects that are able to provide solutions to their immediate community needs. Now imagine when this project are supported and then they are able to be skilled effectively. That would definitely, with the collaboration and support of all the participants of the conference, including leaders from the government, international organizations, and even youth-led organizations, with this collaboration, if we're able to achieve that and youths are meaningfully included, we'll be able to have a future that is energy efficient and fair for everyone. My call to action today is simple. There's need to invest in youth, in the skilling of youth and in the project of youth. An example is what we have at the SDG 7 Youth Constituency, which is the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub. It's a platform where we have showcased youth-led energy projects globally, ranging from sustainable agriculture to the health systems to energy access, waste to energy, among others. You are able to support this youth project by being either a mentor, serving as a resource persons in our capacity building session, or even providing them financing. There's really an opportunity for leaders to invest in youth. And my call to action is, please invest in youth. Give yourself a challenge. Say by the end of the year or by the next time I'm back at the summit, I have invested in at least 3 youth projects.
We've got another wonderful guest with us here today. He's called Bill Kent. He's Executive Director of the Association of Energy Engineers. And, well, Bill, welcome. Nice to see you here.
Thanks, Nick. It's great to be here with you today at this 10th Global Conference on Energy Efficiency. We've been to many of these, and we're certainly proud to participate again today.
Right, okay. So you represent many people in the energy engineering industry, in a sense. And I suppose many people might wonder, okay, I never really thought about that. Maybe somebody pops around to my house occasionally to adjust the temperature here and there. But, you know, tell us a little bit more. Who are these people that you represent?
Okay, great. Well, it's a great question, and we don't really pop around to houses, but you know, we just had the grand opening here, and one of the session immediately after the welcome was, you know, awareness to ambition to action. So when I think about action, we need people. And the people that do that action are energy engineers in many cases. So we're a nonprofit and we have members, and our members are energy engineers. And what an energy engineer does is they really manage all of the energy at a commercial building, at a manufacturing facility, at a hospital, at a campus. So they really evaluate and optimize all of the energy performance at a facility. So what does that mean? Look at everything from the usage of energy, where it comes from, what type of energy, whether it's gas, whether it's electric, whether it's generating your own heat. Look at that and look at everything, lighting all the way through, do an economic analysis on cost savings, on climate action, on greenhouse gas reduction, carbon reduction, and make recommendations, and then actually manage and implement the projects. So the energy engineers they are the doers who implement the energy efficiency projects. we had former Vice President Al Gore speak to our members a year ago, and one of the things he said is, I've trained over 3 million people in climate advocacy, and he said they're passionate, but he said really we need more people, the engineers who are the doers, those who actually go out and do the work that makes the impact. So that's what our members do.
And I imagine it's, in many cases, it's a highly skilled job, right? Because so much has evolved in recent years. Managing distributed energy systems, wind power here, maybe battery storage there, all coming together in systems with digitalization, obviously a lot of monitoring, computers, things like that, checking that everything's functioning. It must be from both, a nuts and bolts job, presumably, I don't know, putting up a wind turbine is an engineering job as well, but the actual managing in a hospital or a building or a complex, it's a skilled job, right?
It is a skilled job. It's usually a degreed engineer or someone who's had many years experience with specialized training and then years of experience in specifically in the energy space.
Right.
So it is highly skilled.
Right. So you're here at the IEA, and it's a big conference. They produce these marvelous reports telling us exactly where we are going in the right direction, where we're not going in the right direction. In your view, is the energy efficiency side very, very important to you? Is it both supply and energy efficiency, or are you more on the energy efficiency side, or is it both?
Well, I think it's more on the energy efficiency side.
Okay.
We're about to celebrate our 50th anniversary. So when we were founded in 1977, it was energy management, all on the energy management, the demand side.
Right.
And it still is the main focus, but also when we're looking at that, we also have to look at how are you producing your energy? Should you generate your own? Should you, have cogeneration? Should you have wind, solar? What do you do for backups, et cetera?
Yeah.
So it's primarily on the demand side, on the energy efficiency side,
Right.
but we also have to evaluate the supply as a part of that.
Yeah, okay, got you. So I see from one of the IEA reports that came out, it was either last night or this morning, that we sort of, in the past, we're doing okay on energy intensity, on energy efficiency, but there seems to be globally a bit of a stalling in the last few years. At the UN Climate Conference in Dubai, COP28, there was this target. I was never quite sure whether it was an old target that was refreshed or whether it was a really new target, but anyway, there was a target set. Tripling of renewables and doubling of energy efficiency.
Right.
Do you feel that we're on track to meet this goal? Do you feel there are some ways that we could unlock more ambition in this area? What are your thoughts about these targets and how it's going?
Well, I think the first thing is I think it's fantastic that at COP28 in the Emirates that we had this UAE consensus where 200 countries signed to triple renewable energy and to double the rate of energy efficiency progress. The data, it's not what I think. The data shows that we are not doing very well. I think the plan was to double from 2% to 4% improvement in energy efficiency, and last year, 2024, it was a 1%. So we're really going in the wrong direction. So, I think what we need is more of the same, with actually action tied to that. So certainly policy, we're having more and more policy, they talked about that. We certainly need more and more funding, and there is more and more funding for that. And so then we just need to turn that into the action that they talked about this morning, is the action. There's so many proven solutions, both in technology and just in implementation. There's so many solutions, and we just need to implement and do more of those. We need corporations and governments, both public and private, to embrace that and to move forward with these solutions if we're going to really meet this doubling of energy efficiency. And as I said, most of it is proven solutions that have a great payback. We talked about the economic payback, they increase competitiveness, they certainly, have climate impact, and they also have security impact. So all of these proven solutions, we just need more implementation of those.
Yeah. I saw that, I think it's the energy efficiency movement also had something out yesterday. Talked about the higher upfront costs of quite a few energy efficiency but yeah, the payback's great after that, but there's a slightly higher upfront cost. Shortage of skilled labor. That's engineers, of course, and others. But I know in Europe it's been a problem with heat pumps, for example. And that some companies get a bit bewildered by the IT that's surrounding some of this new creativity in managing energy. Do those chime with you? I mean, are those some of the areas that we need to beef up a bit? More people trained, a bigger labor force, skilled in these areas. Something to deal with the slightly more expensive upfront costs, maybe, to encourage more industries to adopt or businesses to adopt. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, I would say a couple of things. Certainly there's new technologies and AI and things coming around, but there's so many proven technologies, whether it be replacing motors, adding heat pumps, et cetera.
Yeah.
But something that we see on a major basis is, there's approximately now about 10 million people in the energy efficiency space, and that's expected to grow by 5 million by 2030, which is good.
Right.
But we survey our members in the energy industry, and currently over 75% of our members in the industry around the world say there's currently a shortage of competent energy professionals. And when you add with that a retiring workforce that have been traditionally male dominated in this area, about 40% of the workforce is expected in energy engineers expected to retire in the next 10 years.
Right.
So we are facing a workforce shortage. So both with retirement, growth in the industry, we see that as a major issue, and that we need to start really engaging the youth so that we get more young people. This is a career path, energy engineer, that really makes a difference. Really, it has tremendous climate impact, and it can be a highly successful and profitable career as well. So we see a massive shortage coming of the workforce, and we're working to mentor, to give scholarships, to bring more people into this, to address this shortage, so that we have these experts, the doers, who can actually implement and take action on all of these projects.
Yeah, interesting. So I think we probably need to come towards the end here. I think you probably covered some of these issues, but maybe, if you had any additional messages for governments and their commitments to this energy transition. We could cover many, many things, but I mean, we've got 5 years to halve global greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. You'd have a 50-50 chance of hitting net zero. We could delve into that. I mean, it's an urgent moment, right? So what do we say to governments? And also, I think, these jobs, these good jobs, some people would call them green jobs. This is about social impacts, but also environmental and affordability impacts. It's a big time,
Sure, I would say it's kind of a final comment and summary for me is that, we're having more policy, we're having more funding, and I think, I have the opportunity to address many groups around the world, and I always like to ask a question. When you think about your energy, what is most important to you personally? And I'll ask you this, is it that your energy be clean energy, green energy?
Yes.
Is it that it's affordable and equitable?
Yeah, I don't mind paying a small premium, but not too much.
Okay. Or the third one is reliability the most important?
Yeah, I never thought about that because it always seems to be quite reliable, so I've never had a problem.
Okay.
But yeah, if it didn't switch on the lights, I'd go, what the heck's going on? Yeah.
Right. So overwhelmingly, the vast majority say reliability.
Right.
So I think we all want a clean energy future and the transition to clean energy, but I think a key part of that is a reliable transition. We want the power to stay on, we need a base load, we certainly need to transition and decarbonize for clean energy, but I think reliability is key. And I think energy engineers can play a key role in working with those setting policy and funding to ensure that, that we're both setting policy and funding something that can be achievable in an amount of time and maintain reliability through that. So that's a key thing we think, is maintaining reliability throughout this transition.
And they're actually at the cutting edge of all this. They're out there in the field. They hear what businesses and other companies tell them about things, which is sometimes very far from what the policymakers hear. And so I think bringing that voice into these kinds of big conferences and big debates is really crucial, all right? So
yes.
thank you so much for being with us with We Don't Have Time here in Brussels at the International Energy Agency.
Thank Nick, it's been my pleasure. It's a great event and proud to share my climate love.
Exactly, you can share your climate love wherever you like, as long as it's legal.
Yes, good point. Thank you, Nick.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, bye.
Well, as Alfa Laval, we've been deeply involved in energy efficiency for 100 years, so what's more natural for us than actually co-hosting together with ABB this whole event, so we're very, very proud and happy to do so. There are a lot of ideas and brainstorming going on stage as we speak. I think for me the single biggest part is that we need to find better ways of private-public sector cooperation. I don't like the taxpayer to spend too much money without private sector co-investing, and the private sector cannot carry the whole burden of the transition we're into. So my main message on stage has been, let's find a framework for co-investment, for risk sharing, and then we can get all our important projects going. To settle the framework for the public-private sector partnership and have a risk-sharing model that we can take a lot of the exciting projects in the pipeline forward.
So I'm at the IEA Energy Efficiency Conference because I understand the power of speaking to 700 people in the room that are committed to making a change for people around the world. It's a great opportunity to connect the dots between business leadership, finance innovation, but importantly to make sure that we're leapfrogging in policy around all geographies so everyone reaps the benefits of the first fuel of not using the energy we don't need and being mindful of resources for the sake of planet and improving people's lives. My key takeaways from these conferences is the opportunity of partnership and collaboration. There are huge untapped benefits of energy efficiency around the world. Geographies that are, let's say, on the top of the agenda, saving energy, can continue to help others when they're building new homes or where there's need for clean cooking, leapfrogging, not using fossil fuels, and continuing to show that the opportunity is to improve livelihoods. And I think the power, again, of partnerships has been very central in this conference. Don't forget that 40% of the climate solutions are in buildings, and we can improve them for people's quality of life, but also we can inspire policymakers to have ownership of the agenda and unlock with the finance community the benefits of having clean air, better homes, better insulated, or even cooler, and making sure that we deliver that agenda of sustainability with determination and purpose.
Well, at Grundfos, we think that energy efficiency is super important. The smartest energy is really the energy you do not use, and therefore working on the demand side of it and energy efficiency is very important for resiliency, for competitiveness, but of course also for sustainability. I guess my key takeaway is that we are at a very important moment of time where energy efficiency and the call to action needs to be very, very high. The energy prices in Europe is significantly higher than our peers in Asia and the States. And for competitiveness of European industries, it's super important to work on energy efficiency. And then, I guess, for affordability of energy for businesses, but also for consumers and households in Europe, energy efficiency makes economic very much sense. Now we in Europe have the European Directive for Building Performance and we have the European Energy Efficiency Directive. Now it's up to the member states to implement it and make it happen.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Ramirez. I'm doctor in energy efficiency, electricity markets and smart grid technologies. And I'm here visiting the 10th International Energy Agency Conference. Well, actually, I'm passionate about energy efficiency. I was working in Panama for the energy efficiency and labeling program for the last, let's say, 10 years. Between I was doing also my PhD in Germany and so on. But now I'm thinking that energy efficiency is a key motor for achieving the energy transition also. It's not only about renewables, it's also about how customers behave regarding the use of electricity. I think we can learn from different countries. It's very interesting to see the advances that Germany, Panama, and some other regions have been made regarding energy efficiency index, labeling programs, regulations for buildings, and so on. And that's one of the reasons that I am here visiting, learning from each other. And I think this is the best thing, creating synergies between each other and trying also to learn about successful experiences and how to overcome our challenges. Implementing is the next step that we have to do. It's not only about policy maker, it's more like how to implement our energy efficiency technologies inside.
So we're at the International Energy Agency in Brussels with another wonderful guest. He is Mario Giordano. Okay, thank you, Mario. My Italian is sometimes a little bit challenged, yeah. Global Head of Public and Government Affairs at Signify. And I think many viewers will have heard of Signify, but just in case they haven't, Mario, can you tell us who Signify is and what products and narratives you're working on in terms of energy efficiency?
Yeah, thank you very much. So Signify is the new name of Philips Lighting. We are the world leader in lighting. We provide professional customers and consumer with efficient lighting and connected lighting. And I mean, connected lighting is also the way in which we bring light, of course, but we also collect data that we connect with people, with devices, and with places, because lighting is everywhere. I mean, here in this space in which we are in, lighting is really everywhere. So I mean, we can really take advantage of lighting. It's also a way to communicate. Yeah. And there is also, thanks to this, I think we can look at lighting in a different way, the way we use it, the way we take advantage of it. But I would say the most important, also in this context, role of lighting is as a tool of energy efficiency. We have seen in the last decades, I would say, the big advantage that LED lighting gave in terms of energy efficiency. Currently, you can say that lighting can help you save up to 90% compared to conventional or non-efficient lighting. Imagine like an LED bulb. An energy-efficient LED bulb today consumes 60% less compared to another LED bulb, so less efficient, first generation, let's call it first generation. So we think that the lighting has, a great role to play, still a great role to play in energy efficiency. That's also why we have, exactly 1 year ago, in June last year, we were just talking about, the climate commitment. We launched our climate transition plan in June 2024. It was the 18th of June 2024, and which is our objective and our way to really declare our commitment to reach the 90% emission reduction by 2040. Yeah. And simply because if you look at lighting, and really based on IEA data, we are here today, the IEA Global Conference on Energy Efficiency, lighting represents 2% of the global emission, which is equivalent to the aviation.
Aviation and shipping, yeah.
Yeah, so try to imagine that you have the tool available, ready in terms of technology to cut immediately by half this one. So you can cut 1% of the emission simply by upgrading or retrofitting existing non-efficient lighting all around the world. Yeah.
Tell me, I mean, one of the challenges, I mean, I know this has been a long journey for what was Philips and now Signify over many, many years, and you were one of the real pioneers on energy efficient lighting. At that time, you were partnering actually with a German company, which I can't remember the name now, but you've been really in this for a long time. And I suppose one of the challenges that you found, in a sense, is a bit like what everybody else has found in other sectors of the economy, which is that they thought if they made these advances that there would be massive gains, and there were, but at the same time, the global demand for energy just keeps going up, doesn't it? So you're racing against a clock. I mean, you're winning, but it's a real challenge, isn't it? I don't know what time we get in the world, I don't know what point in the future we get to where the world's demand for more and more energy stops. But that is a challenge, is it not, for all companies trying to cut emissions with their products? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is pretty much connected with something that has been agreed at COP in 28, to double the rate of energy efficiency, and together with renewables. So we have those two objectives, those two commitments. Now, I think that those are really going hand in hand, I would say, because the renewable can provide a lot of energy, but as we used to say, energy efficiency is the first fuel. So what we really think is that if we can save energy, this energy can be used for other purposes. Now, imagine for a second that we can switch all the non-efficient light points in the world. We would have saved annually the electricity consumption of India. So I think this is the contribution of lighting, not just Signify, the lighting industry can contribute to immediately reduce the electricity consumption. And this electricity can be used for other purposes, vehicles, heat pumps. We can avoid, the building other plants, other energy plants. We can reduce the emissions.
And the stress on the grid as well, because the grid is a bit stressed by how much green energy we have to connect so fast. So you can help with that too.
Yeah, indeed, you can reduce that. And thanks to the connectivity that I was mentioning before, you can also increase the responsiveness of the infrastructure because you can dim down, you can even gather data and understand the occupancy of buildings. Like, let's look at the building, for example. We are in Brussels, we are in Europe. Europe is on its way to transpose in each single country the European, the APBD, the Energy Performance of Building Directive. Thanks to this, we will be able to upgrade the worst performing building. Now, try to imagine again for a second that we are able to retrofit, to upgrade and to reduce the energy consumption thanks to LED. And on top of this, we are able to connect all those buildings, gathering data. And with data, and there was a discussion also today in the plenary room that we need all those data, because otherwise the artificial intelligence does not have enough data to come with a solution. So I think that the way of connected lighting with a building management system, with infrastructure, is also a way to provide data that we can use to make the use of energy more efficient in general. And it's about also the system efficiency. So connected with other devices, for example, with HVAC, with others, with other uses of the buildings, but also in the city environment.
I see that Signify, along with, it was like about 150 companies, wasn't it, meeting in Cambridge at the, what was it called? The Institute of Sustainable, I can't remember actually now. But it was a week or so ago, wasn't it? And made a declaration, EU, we want a 90% emission reduction target for 2040, which you mentioned earlier. And I thought that was so cool because, I don't know, having been involved in this whole area of climate change, one thinks of the Paris Agreement, whose anniversary it is this year, as you know, that, it was CEOs from major companies coming to Paris and saying, no, we want you to do this. We want a global treaty of all nations. And I think it gave a lot of governments, kind of covered their backs, gave them a chance to make the right kind of decision. But sometimes in the past, and I'm not saying Signify, but some other companies that have been very vocal when things were going well, sometimes sort of disappear off the public scene a little bit in talking about climate change. And of course, this is exactly the moment when we need the voice of the private sector to stand up and say, no, we have ambitions ourselves to hit high targets with our products and things like that. And so I thought it was very significant that Signify was among that group of companies. Tell us about it. Why was this convened, in a sense? Why did you feel, as a company, you wanted to do this? Yeah.
I think this is pretty much in line with the purpose of each company. The purpose of Signify is core to whatever we do, is to unlock the extraordinary potential of life for brighter life and better world. So once you have clear that this is our purpose, then all the initiatives are pretty much, they make sense because they're aligned with our purpose. So whatever we do, we are really purpose-driven into this. So we think that lighting has a role into this. We are the biggest lighting company. We are the leader. So we have the feeling that we have the right and the duty to advocate for our industry, of course, together with the association and other companies. It is not the case that today here we have like 30, 35 CEOs. There are many CEOs on the stage, CEOs in the room, because what is needed is that there is a bit of collaboration between the public, European institution, global institution, and the CEO. We should not just agree an objective. They should meet in order to make it happen. Whatever happens, we have the agreements. We have even look at the Green Deal. I mean, the Green Deal has been announced in 2019. Then in 2020 has been published. Then we had COVID. Then we had the energy crisis, which is the cause of the Ukrainian the war in Ukraine. Now, what happened is that the objective remained the same. We need to adjust. We need just to rethink how to make it happen. I'm really optimistic, I would say, because here I see a lot of CEO. All the CEO are delivering the same message. Everybody is committed. Everybody is ready to do his part into this. And the other reason why I'm really positive is that all the technology that I've seen, not just lighting, all the technology which I've seen are ready.
Yeah.
So Europe is considered the powerhouse of energy efficiency. So we're not talking about something which will be developed in ages, in the next decade. It's about things that are available in Europe or available in the world. We do have the production capacity. So it's not about the how. We know really which is the technology. It's really about how to make it happen in terms of policy, in terms of timing, in terms of financing. And I think that this kind of forum are the right place to sit together and evaluate what we need as a business sector and what we need as a government to really implement policies to speed up, and also to make sure that we match that ambitious target that we had at COP, which is the 4% in energy efficiency, while we see from IEA data that we are stuck more or less at 1%.
Yeah. It's certainly true that in the European Union, led by the Commission, we just had a lady from the Commission on just before, and it's still there, the Green New Deal, or the New Green Deal is still there, isn't it? Now you've got the Clean Industrial Deal, and you've got an innovation fund, and yes, they're announcing shortly this thing on buildings. So they're really pumping out quite a lot of legislation, and I don't see any other part of the world taking this so seriously as the Commission and the member states of the EU. And in a sense, it's probably needed. Hopefully, it will pull everybody else along. It will attract other nations to want to be part of what we're doing. And then we have a global solution to many problems if everybody else is on board. Mario, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, but I think you've covered quite a lot of
Thank
the
you
issues. Is there any innovation coming on at Signify that we should know about? I think it's only 2% now, isn't it, when you're with the LEDs? In other words, that's the performance, the efficiency. Could you get it to 99%, 99.5%? I don't know. Is it possible?
Yeah, I think that's the sky is the limit in terms of technology, because really you can improve. But where you can improve is also in the way we design.
Yes.
And it's not about the technology itself, it's the way we design also the application.
Right, so you're talking about eco-design?
No, I'm not talking when we design the project. I mean,
okay.
Because it's really about, the lighting for offices or for industry or for the retail. They are pretty different. So we think that what's very important also in the retrofitting of existing installation is to redesign. It's not simply, to change the light bulb, but you can really redesign the lighting infrastructure.
Yes.
And so we really advocate also for the importance of lighting design,
right?
Which is like in every other industry, it's very important to have.
So it's how you design the building if you're retrofitting, so there's more chance for the light to spread, or something as simple as that.
There is even the contribution of natural lighting thanks to sensor, for example. You can take advantage of the natural light. You can take advantage of the different occupancy of different area. You can take advantage of different needs. There are many things that can be designed based on the application, or
Yes.
which can be driven by the technology thanks to sensor as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So yes, it's really in the way we design rather than in how the technology is able to reach
Yeah.
this or that.
That's a very good point. So it's a systems approach.
It's a system approach,
Okay.
indeed. Thank you very much.
Good, Mario. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you very much.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have another wonderful guest with us here at the International Energy Agency in Brussels, where people are attending from all over the world to talk about energy efficiency and how we can lead to more energy efficient lifestyles, products and economies. Please say who you are and where you're from.
Yes, Claes Forsström, CEO and President of Munters Group.
Okay, very nice to meet you. Maybe for those who are not familiar with the Munters Group, you could perhaps, Klaus, enlighten us. Exactly what do you do?
Let me start like this. We are a fast-growing company that provides climate solutions to industrial critical systems. And you may say, what is that then? It is, frankly, it's about dehumidifying. It is about cooling, it is about purifying air, and then provide a perfect climate for many industrial critical applications.
Right. So what you're saying is that and many people might not realize this, that a lot of industries need to reduce the amount of moisture in the air, for example, with dehumidifiers.
Absolutely.
They need different temperatures, sometimes at different times, so you need to cool quite quickly. And you mentioned, I mean, does dust come into this, and dust and other elements, or?
But let me start to talk a little bit about where do you need those solutions.
That would be helpful.
And as an example, from producing baby milk powder to chocolate powder to how to create the perfect climate when you produce batteries, from very small batteries to very large batteries for the EV industry, or when it comes to purifying a clean room in a semiconductor setup, etc. So in many different, very, very critical and transformative industries, we are a very important part of the solution. And I can tell you, I mean, before I joined Munters 6 years ago, I didn't know that we are so integrated in a lot of transformations going on.
Right. So I suppose the question would be, if Munters didn't produce these kinds of systems to, say, dehumidify, reduce the moisture in a room, or to purify the air and this sort of thing, what would happen to all these sensitive products?
In simple words, they would either not be as efficient, generate as much energy savings, or they will degrade much faster. So having this, as an example, when you produce a battery, you need to have an ultra-dry environment. If you don't have that, the battery will not be as efficient, and actually it can also stop working. And I go back to the baby milk powder, you know, when you prepare this, if you do it in the wrong way, it clogs and it becomes cement close to.
Right, yeah.
So when you produce this, if this is not at the right dryness, I mean, it will not generate the efficiency that is needed for the industry.
And you're operating, obviously, in Sweden, in Europe?
We operate globally,
Okay.
and simply put, about 50% of what we sell and also what we produce is in North America. About 1/3 is in Europe, and the remaining, call it residual, is in Asia then.
Right. So, you just announced, actually I Googled this the other day, I think it was April maybe, that you announced that you'd been approved for a science-based target. And that really is a great and courageous step. Obviously, there are quite a few companies that have done this, but there are quite a few companies that haven't done it. And I think it's often mainly companies in Europe, some in North America, and then it sort of patters out a little bit around the world. So tell us a little bit about why you wanted to do this, because this is a quite ambitious move for you to take on.
Yeah, but absolutely, and when we sort of grind down to what would we like to achieve, and I will come into the scientific-based targets within soon then, that is, we have an ambition to double our size and in parallel half our carbon footprint. So by then applying for scientific-based targets, I mean, then you really have to commit, you have to prove that this is possible.
Yeah.
And if I summarize our scientific-based target setup, that is, I mean, in our own operations, we would like to reduce it with a little bit more than 40%. And that is then done when we double the output.
Right.
And to our customers, we say like this, our best way to deliver customer value, that is to deliver energy efficiency and thereby them to reduce their carbon footprint. And here we aim to reduce it with about 50%, because more than 99% of our carbon footprint is generated when the customers are using our products.
Right. So, Klaus, tell me a little bit just at the production level where you're making these things. How are you going about that? Is it renewable energy that you're using for the manufacturing, this kind of thing?
If you go into how can we then reduce our own footprint when it comes to production, we have taken many steps now to use green energy. So we have one target then that we already have achieved. That is 80% of our energy consumption should come from green energy. We have invested substantially into solar panels, etc., in North America, and using quality geothermal energy in where you can use that, so to speak. So it is this combination that, and for me, if I sort of summarize it, we talk about energy efficiency, and this is a great opportunity here. That is about that we can learn from other industrials, we can collaborate, but at the end, for me, energy efficiency is another, call it, facet of the successful formula that has been in the industry for many years. Productivity, always drive productivity. And if you drive productivity, you produce more.
More for less.
Yes.
Yes.
And
exactly.
it's the same in energy efficiency.
But basically, you're potentially delivering a double benefit in your supply chain, aren't you? Because you are not only in. So we talked about obviously what you do at your factories, but on the supply chain, you're providing energy efficient systems, the dehumidifying systems for example. But also, there would be more emissions from these companies that you support, that you sell to, if they had a poor quality product, because they'd lose more product themselves, right? Because some would be damaged, or the batteries might not work, and people would send them back, right?
And I think we have...
And waste, that's emissions as well, right?
Yeah. And absolutely. So waste is an emission, circularity, therefore we are also driving what we call then a higher content of service. A dilemma, and I think it's a positive challenge, that is some of our energy changes or industrial changes when it comes to providing green solutions are also short-term in need of a lot of energy. So here comes the double effect. If we can support them creating this, and at the same time also deliver more energy efficient ways of producing, we can benefit in two ways, so to speak.
Yeah, I've got it. So I think we've covered pretty much everything here, Klaus. Do you think that there is a role, and this is my final question briefly, for innovative companies like yourselves who have committed to an ambitious target, so you can stand up in front of anybody, so actually we walk the talk, to actually, in a sense, help governments do the right thing in terms of policy, because you need policy to set the right kind of framework, a certainty of direction, blah, 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 blah. So, and in a sense, you're, as a company, coming forward, in a sense, to say, hey, we're here at a big event like the IEA.
No, but the short answer is yes. At the end, I mean, success is very, very often driven by collaboration.
Yeah.
It is about collaborating in industries across, it is collaborating or educating policymakers, etc. And put it like this, regulations are very good because they set the standard. At the same time, if that can also have, if I may say so, a little bit more a pragmatic approach, where it comes also how can we speed this up?
Yeah.
And do this, you know, the strategy of the many steps.
Yeah.
Instead of taking a giant leap and put all the demands and now you need to do this in 1 year.
Yeah.
Say, this is a long term and let's do it in many, many different steps. Here I think policymakers can learn from industry and industry can learn from policymakers and by having a dialogue, then we have a long-term success.
Exactly. Okay, a great pleasure to meet you. Congratulations on your
Thank you very
science-based target. I think that's really cool. And yeah, best of luck with your work.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have two wonderful guests here with us at the International Energy Agency conference here in Brussels, where leaders and experts and ministers are all talking about energy efficiency and how we can actually improve performance there to actually meet climate targets, affordability of energy, and other crucial issues. My two wonderful guests are from SKF, a very interesting company which we're going to learn more of. I've got Vanja Winblad here, who's Director of Sustainability, and I've also got Ellis-Jan van der Hout, who is an industry leader with SKF. Thank you very much for being here. Ellis-Jan, SKF has a slogan, less friction, more progress. Can you tell us what that means and in a sense would bridge a little bit to actually your primary product, which is going to be a surprise for a lot of viewers, unless they watched the Change Now show from Paris a few weeks ago, but many will not have done. So fill us in.
Yeah, that's correct. Less friction, more progress, and it connects to our main product. And we heard today a lot about energy efficiency and sustainability and energy transition. And if you dig a little bit deeper, there's always hardware behind. So equipment, rotating equipment. And then you touch on SKF, because we are a global supplier of components for rotating equipment, bearings, seals, lubrication, all kind of connected services.
Right.
And then less friction, more progress is the heart of our company. It's in our DNA. We are fighting friction every day.
Interesting.
You may be surprised that 20% of the global energy is used to overcome friction. So imagine if we can improve the performance of our components, what an enormous impact and an opportunity we can have. And it's not about reduction of friction. Our components are also in the heart of all kinds of equipment. Wind turbines, compressors, heat pumps, electrical motors. So it's not only about reducing friction, also about contributing to the energy transition. So the equipment is in the heart of the energy transition. So it's some kind of double effect. We reduce energy consumption, but also contribute to the development of, I would say, new sustainable and renewable energy sources. So it's great that we have so much direct impact on energy efficiency. So if we improve our components or we are able to offer new technologies, we have immediately a big impact on energy efficiency.
So you're absolutely right. Most people would not even think about that, right? They would just look at the wind turbine going round and round and round. Sometimes they complain that they don't go around when it's too windy and they go, what are they doing? But, you know, they don't really think, this is actually a system with various components, which not only are you making or enabling that possibility of this XYZ company doing that, but and therefore reducing friction, but you're also ensuring that they don't wear out as fast or as quickly, right? So that's another contribution, because that means there would be more waste of the materials, not just, you know, the heat story, but the materials themselves, right? So this is why it's absolutely fascinating. And there's new, I mean, so, okay, if you're a kid, you ride a bicycle, you got ball bearings often in the wheels, right? That's what most people's relationship with ball bearings are. But ball bearings are advancing, is this right? They're no longer just the little metal things you get in your bike, right?
It's a high innovative, high technology type of product. It looks like a piece of steel, but it's high technology inside the bearing. And so very often it's overlooked by people. Okay, they see a wind turbine, but you will find them everywhere around in your daily work, or daily operations, or at home, then you realize, hey, they are everywhere around, when you are, I would say, living around in your house and do your work. So the impact then also can be very enormous to energy efficiency. And for instance, like an example, if we are able to reduce friction in bearings which are mounted into an electrical motor with 30%, we will reduce the energy consumption with 1%. Imagine, and there are 300 million drive systems in Europe with an electrical motor. So the potential for energy efficiency and improvements are enormous if we are and we will deliver the right, let's say, future components to it as well. So imagine the opportunity.
And you're dealing with new materials as well, aren't you? You're doing with ceramics.
Yeah, ceramics. There's one
magnetic bearings.
Yeah. There's one of the, I would say, things I could maybe highlight. The recent developments to really contribute to energy efficiency. Hybrid ceramic bearings, so bearings made of steel rings, industrial ceramic rolling elements. They will lower the friction with 10 to 20% depending on the application.
Right.
And then also higher speeds, less lubrication. So the potential is there, again, enormous for the industrial applications. There's been niche projects from automotive and also from aerospace. But now it's also going to industrial applications like electrical motors for industrial applications. So we are again developing these products to become more mainstream products to be used in industrial applications.
Right.
That's one of the recent developments, but also magnetic bearings you touched on. Also breakthrough technology.
Yeah.
No friction, no mechanical contact, no wear, no lubrication. Imagine
what it can bring. Is that the ultimate goal? Is that the ultimate goal, or is it happening now? Is that the ultimate? Is that the North Star?
North Star, no friction is something like, I would say almost impossible, but a magnetic bearing system has no mechanical friction.
Cars running on water and this kind of thing.
No, but like a maglev train, it's also had almost no friction, so that's a good example of it as well. So you also see it now in rotating equipment with magnetic bearings, the same principle.
Right.
Interesting development for instance, for building heating and cooling, where there's a lot of energy usage we heard today. This solution will reduce energy consumption with around 30%. Again, the potential to improve and replace existing systems with magnetic systems is great.
Okay. Let's go to you, Vanya, because in your view, my understanding is that SKF has been around for a long time. It's a company that's been with us over 100 years, and you've been doing what you do, and I don't know, world leader, but in many parts of the world you're operating an unbelievably successful company. But suddenly you're here at the International Energy Agency with people from all around the world, and I think I understand from talking earlier you'll also be attending the next UN Climate Conference in Belém in Brazil later in the year, COP30. Why is it important for a company like yours to, in a sense, attend these events? What is motivating you to put your head over the parapet, dip your toe into the international arena? What purpose does it serve?
No, I mean, just like Elisian explained here, I mean, we are producing a critical but hidden component and solutions into so many industries, but we're also quite a hidden company. So up till now, a lot of people don't know who we are, and I think we are quite unknown to the masses. And I must say, we must have had quite an humble appearance publicly up till now, and that is somewhat changing a bit, because we truly believe, I mean, with fighting friction as the core of what we do. And a purpose that reads, together we reimagine rotation for a better tomorrow. We certainly believe that we should, have a role to play in contributing to a more sustainable and energy efficient industry. So we have, as you said, I mean, we have more than 100 years experience with so many industries, but also have made sustainability something at the heart of what we do. So it's really in our DNA, and a lot of companies say that, but I just want to give some examples to prove our point. More than 25 years ago, we put our own first climate targets. That was far before the climate, the Paris Agreement, and let's say the SBTi targets, which we obviously also have today. And since then, SKF has relentlessly and systematically worked to decouple our revenue growth from our own emissions, which since then has, revenue has doubled and our own emissions has basically reduced with 60%. So we are, let's say, systematically working on these matters, and we have experiences, vast experiences from our own operations that we kind of feel it's time to share with the world. So it's to give you some examples of what we do in our own operations. Then, I mean, first of all, energy efficiency. I mean, we are talking energy efficiency. We are here at the IEA. We put a hard KPI on our operations on a 5% yearly energy improvement. So basically, a reduction of energy volume adjusted year over year.
Within your own...
Exactly. We don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. And we deliver on that. So maybe not 5% every year, but we are hovering around globally in a 3.5% reduction, which is, I think, quite impressive when we talk to peers and industries. And that is making us more resilient, right? It's reducing our cost, and it's, as we heard today, also very much contributing to let's say, our own reduced emissions. We are also, because there are also very tough technologies that, they simply need to be replaced to kind of be decarbonized and more energy efficient. And here we put the money where our mouth is, so to say. So we have put aside a so-called EDIF frame, so energy efficiency and decarbonization investment frame, which is basically earmarked money to help our factory managers and our operational leaders to make these tough investments that sometimes wouldn't maybe pay off according to our normal financial return of investment rules, but we do it anyways.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, examples where we really we walk our talk, and we have some...
I understand that exactly, and I think that's a good point, because you've, in a sense, hidden your light a little bit under a bushel, and now, shedding light on what you achieve, which can inspire others as well, which is good. But also, it's absolutely critical what happens to the companies that you support when providing your bearings and bearing assemblies, right? What happens to them?
Exactly.
So, I mean, if something stupid happened, let's say the COP30 in Berlin, where all the leaders said, we don't want any more wind turbines in the world, then that would be like a disaster in one segment of your industry that you supply, right? I mean, they're not going to do that, of course. But in other words, it's worth being in these higher levels, because the laws or the rules of the game agreed in a UN conference eventually percolate down to national governments, and they have to work out how to implement them. Yeah, so it's also about partnership, and it's about partnership with your customers, your friends, or whatever, to make sure that the right decisions are taken on behalf of a group of companies that are within an ecosystem, mutually interacting, right?
Exactly.
So I think you're going with Business Sweden, aren't you?
Exactly. So we are joining several other Swedish-based companies. We're Swedish funded, or Swedish. We're born in Sweden, but we are very much a global company. But to COP, we're going together with some other Swedish large companies.
Yeah.
To really raise our voice, that we stand firmly as a company behind, let's say, sustainable development, decarbonization, and let's say more renewable.
The Paris Agreement.
Totally, we are totally behind that. But we are a company, operating together with many of our customers and partners in an ecosystem. So we can't, let's say, as a single company in that ecosystem, let's say, move faster or have more ambitious, let's say, targets or let's say operations than what the market somehow is willing to pay. So this is really, and this is where the policy come into play. This is where regulations and good rules that are the same for everyone is so important. And this is the voice, and this is the, let's say, message that we want to bring together with many of the other large industries that we're going with. So basically, it needs to, I mean, of course, we want to be, we are committed to the Paris Agreement. We want to be a sustainable and responsible company, and we are. But it also should pay off, huh?
Yeah.
It also has to be competitive to be clean.
You're not a charity, right? So
exactly,
and this is profitable.
This goes for all of our customers, and very still few in B2B. are willing to, let's say, voluntarily pay a green premium or a higher price for something that is sustainable. But I think that whole discussion is a bit problematic. I think what is not green should instead be more expensive.
Yes, of course.
So
yes.
this is, let's
there
say,
should be a higher cost on the things that are causing more damage.
the polluter pay principle, right? So this whole, let's say, rules of the game, and that the policy and the regulations is supporting responsible companies like ourselves. That is basically what we want to lift.
Okay, we're going to have to just wrap up here because we've run out of time. But because it goes very quickly, right? It's amazing. But I want to thank you both for being on the show. And I think this is an ongoing story. Yes. Very fascinating to hear about some of these new developments as well. I want to ask one simple question to you both, in a very simple answer. When you're here at the IEA and you talk to people, when you say what you make, what do they say? Are they like, I never thought about that? I mean, what's the response when you...
Many people say, I don't know, I'm not aware. If you then start explaining, then suddenly they start to realize.
The penny drops,
Yeah, like, you're really an essential component for, I would say, everything what
So then they get it.
Then they get it.
But the first second, you're like, okay, and this person's going, oh, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's funny, and some people have never even heard the word bearing. They're like, bearing what?
But bearing gifts. Bearing gifts.
Depends on who you talk to, of course.
Yeah.
Others that I've met here are like, oh, you're from SKF, nice. So it's depends.
Well, it'd be like if a bicycle without a rubber tire would be a bit of a disaster, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, people don't think about rubber tires, but in fact, they're important too. So, anyway, so many things in our lives that we don't know are integral parts of how we actually live and hopefully how we prosper into the future in a sustainable way. Thank you very much for being on We Don't Have Time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you,
Lovely
Nick.
to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Nice to see you in the flesh. So good morning, hello, and here we are as We Don't Have Time at our broadcast hub of the 10th annual conference on energy efficiency of the International Energy Agency. We're very happy to be here. We're talking to leaders, of the energy transition from all over the world, and we're focusing particularly on how energy efficiency is indispensable for cutting humanity's reliance on fossil fuels, of course, in order to handle climate change, but also deliver energy security and perhaps affordability to consumers and also industry. And it's also something about competitiveness in what has become a very competitive world. First up, we've got a wonderful guest who's joining us, who's, I think, based here in Brussels. And if you could tell us who you are and where you're from, who you're representing.
Great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. My name is Willem Vriesendorp. I'm the founder of a company called Sustainable Public Affairs.
Okay.
And I'm the co-founder of Norsken House Brussels.
Okay.
So those two hats I'm wearing today.
Okay. You might have to clear up Norsken House Brussels because we have a global audience and they may wonder what that is. But it has some, what is it exactly?
It is a house.
Yep.
And it is not just such a, it's not a house like a house, but it's a co-working. And it is a place of convening for impact entrepreneurs to come to Brussels and to make sure that they tell the regulatory authorities here in Brussels that they are ahead of the curve and that they need the regulator to help them become competitive.
Okay, okay. So we'll come to that in a minute because that's quite an interesting concept. Because, I mean, there are a lot of public affairs companies around the world. They're doing all kinds of things. Some of them aren't doing very positive things for, you know, the energy transition or climate action or sustainability. How do you define yourself in terms of being special in this area? What are you doing that's so different?
Thanks. Well, sustainable public affairs, it's all in the word, right? We do public affairs like any other company or public affairs agency would do. The only difference is that we do that for what we call sustainable frontrunners. Those companies that are already outperforming EU environmental standards or regulations. So it's not the ones that are on a journey of transition. No, it's the ones that are currently already there, that make green cement, or that make energy efficiency solutions, or that make hamburgers that are made out of plants rather than out of meat. It's those that are already outperforming the standards. And for them, the EU environmental standards are as much a hindrance as for the ones that are underperforming those standards. The standards are not high enough, if you want, or their products or their services that they produce, they are sold at a green premium.
Right.
So they're actually too expensive. Now, if you are a sustainable frontrunner and you're producing these goods or services at this that green premium, you can do two things, right? You can either downscale on your sustainability ambitions, or you can try and have the regulatory system work for you. Try to make your outperformance the norm for the rest of the industry. And that's exactly where we play. We try, together with our clients that are outperforming those standards, we try to lobby for more stringent, more ambitious climate legislation.
Right.
So that their sustainability leadership becomes a competitive advantage.
It's very interesting you say this because, I mean, you know, we're in the 10th anniversary of the Paris Climate Agreement, and it seems that such a normal thing, but if you look at the history of climate change and bringing all the world together on one treaty, it was a really tough fight for many, many, many years. Then suddenly, magically, it happened. But part of the story there seems to have been that in Paris, the governments were really supported by many, many companies who said, no, 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 we want this agreement. We need it for our ambition to be greener, cleaner, climate-friendly companies. So many CEOs turned up and had the backs of the governments to make what was, it doesn't seem like a tough choice now, but it might have been a tough choice then. But then what's interesting right now is, I don't know if you know an organization called Influence Map out of London. They're very good with reports. They just had one out recently, which seemed to be that a lot of companies do want, you know, the EU to hold its nerve on, you know, high legislation in the climate space and sustainability space. But a lot of the trade associations that they're in are lobbying around the back, trying to water them down, right? So you need a counter narrative, don't you, from those that are really high ambition to get the EU to A, hold its nerve, and B, go higher.
Yep.
Is that the kind of, am I capturing that in a sense?
I think you're capturing two different trends very well.
Yeah.
One is that, going first to what you said about the Paris Agreement, why did those CEOs turn up to a private sector? Why do they turn up to a public sector event or happening? It's because sustainability in the end, or climate change, or sustainable business models are very hard to make competitive if it is not without the regulator backing it up. So there is always this intricate dance between the private sector and the public sector. And I think that's a very interesting given. So yes, public sectors or private sector should be in the lead, but public sector should be accommodating it. So that's on that. That's why I think at that moment in time, it was very good that all those CEOs came out. But it was also very good that the public sector got their act together and ratified all of that in the Paris Agreement. Now, 10 years later, maybe some of us would have hoped that much more had changed, right? And I think part of why not so much has changed as we might have hoped for is that a lot of what we discussed back then were voluntary commitments. And voluntary commitments might be looking very good and feasible in 2015, and in 2015, 2030 or 2050 might seem a long way off. But here we are now talking together in 2025, only 5 years before 2030. So that means that you have still 5 years left to make good on what you promised in 2015 for 2030, right? Things are coming very close. So if it's only for voluntary commitments, one might go back to the shareholders and have a hard time in trying to still push for that. So that's why I think only voluntary commitments are not enough. We need to have also more hard law requirements. We need to have this voluntary commitments translated into mandatory obligations, into hard law, as I said.
Yeah.
And that is where I think the trade associations, and that's the second part of your question, that's where the trade associations, I think, differ from the individual companies. The individual companies are registered in the Transparency Register and have their lobby and interactions with the public sphere all recorded for in the Transparency Register. They have their position papers, they have their brand value, etc. So on the one hand, through their own bodies, I think they say and do a lot of good things, very constructive. On the other hand, in the more intimate space of the associations, which is much more opaque, I think the real lobbying is taking place. That's where in the regulatory committees, the smart regulatory affairs people of those big companies have a seat at the table and are able to influence the regulator. And what the trade association doesn't always one-on-one match with the position paper or the stance of the individual companies. And I think that is a very good point of Influence Map, which is a great organization, and you bringing it up here right now.
And also you need regulation because the companies that really want to move forward and even those that are unsure sometimes need a kick to know that this is the direction of travel, right? The regulation gives you a direction of travel that says, you know, this country, or in the case of the EU, a block of many countries, is basically, you know, set on this North Star of progressing. I mean, I see 150 businesses just recently in Cambridge University were meeting and said, we want the EU 90% emission reduction in 2040. So, you know, I think it's so important what you're doing, and it's so important that the companies that really are invested in this transition stand up for it, rather than sometimes sit back and keep a bit quiet, right? Because given all the winds blowing from America and all the other things that are going on, we need to have a strong back in the EU and strong nerve to keep going with what is right.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to wrap up here, but any last thoughts? Any areas of the transition that you feel excited about at the moment from some of the companies you work with? New ideas?
Well, yeah, I think there's a huge momentum for Europe at the moment.
Yeah.
I think we got our house in order. We've got a very solid regulatory system. We've got predictability, long-termism. We are very good. We're at the Conference for Energy Efficiency. We have a very big history in producing companies that are good at energy efficiency. Let's try to work hand in hand with the regulator to try and scale them further, set long-term targets that those companies can live up to. And then I think we'll be transforming our own sustainability leadership as Europe in a competitive advantage. So stay tuned.
Okay. Thanks very much for your time, Wilhelm. Very nice to meet you.
Yeah. Nice to speak.
Good work, and yeah, we need a counterbalance to the negative lobbying. We need a positive lobbying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. So another wonderful guest with us here at the International Energy Agency's Energy Efficiency Conference in Brussels, in Belgium. It's Jane Cohen. Jane, you lead a team focused on what you're calling people-centered clean energy transition at the International Energy Agency. Can you illuminate us? What does this all mean?
Sure. Well, when you think about the work of the IEA, you probably think of really kind of detailed modeling and projections of, you know, what our energy future looks like, what the technology we need to get there is. And what the people-centered team does is says, that's great, we need all that, but we also really need to think about how does energy actually impact people? How do these technologies impact people? How do the policies impact people? How can we make sure that people are really benefiting from energy policy generally, and in particular from clean energy transitions? So that's really kind of at the outset what our team does. And it's interesting because you might think it's obvious, right? Like, of course, it's actually all about people. But when you're really talking with policymakers, when you're talking about with people who are working on technology, that's often not really at the center. And what we find is that when we really look at the ways that policy design can impact people in different ways, it makes a huge difference on what those outcomes are.
So, I mean, it's been interesting this year, this conference, because there's a lot of talk about affordability, competitiveness, which you can look at in different ways, and maybe a little bit less on climate change. I think that's something to do with the atmosphere at the moment in the world. But it's nice to see the word affordability there as well, because for many people that is absolutely critical, isn't it? I suppose affordability, and if you're in the developing world, reliability as well. Tell us a little bit about this affordability. I mean, how does it impact people's lives if energy is too expensive?
Well, I think you bring up a really good point. And first of all, I agree that there's a less focus on climate, but I also think in a way, having had many conversations with people, as I'm sure you have as well, most people, like, climate change is not their primary concern. Their primary concern is, can I afford electricity to keep my food cold, or my my house heated? Are my children breathing clean air? Am I able to, is there transportation for me to get to my job? Those are sort of the primary things that people really care about. And I think there is this kind of recognition that we have to really show how these things are intertwined, how decarbonization and these really positive benefits can go together. And affordability is at the top of that list. We talk about energy affordability being an issue, and I want to kind of underscore the fact that many people in the world live on the outside of the energy system anyway. And then in advanced economies, we see that poorer households spend a significant share of their income on energy. So a proportionally much bigger amount of their income on energy than wealthier households. And oftentimes, they really have trouble affording energy at all. And that's just we've seen that get worse and worse over time. And so that's why I think, on the one hand, why we see a focus at places like this, where we know that energy efficiency can really increase and enhance affordability, but also because of this recognition that these kind of climate messages are not really landing and really getting into kind of the base of where people's focus is and what they really care about, and ensuring that our policy design really hits on those places. I think there's a recognition that there's got to be more of that. And I'm happy to see that. I think there is a bit of a change there. I think I'm curious what you think, but I am starting to see, like, people talk about these sort of base priorities for people a little bit more.
So, I mean, I suppose when I think about it, I always think of, particularly if you look at Africa and do we still call them developing countries? My girlfriend always slaps me around the face when I say developing countries, but that's how the UN defines them, isn't it? And how those countries actually define themselves in the UN system.
Yeah.
So
We say
not my fault, Bernadette. Yeah, okay.
We say emerging and developing economies.
Emerging and developing economies. What about countries in transition? Is that still there as well? Yeah, okay, that's that one too. Okay,
but it might not be by the time this airs. So maybe
who knows? But I always seem to me that, it was kind of like a no-brainer that, solar particularly was kind of like a no-brainer for many of those people living off the grid, right? And that, the promise of a big coal-fired power station or a big nuclear plant in Africa seemed like very big, shiny, sign of progress, but actually was maybe a bit of an illusion for most of the people there, because building the grid out to even reach them would take so much time. So, and you talk about affordability, about, lighting that you can get through renewable energy quite quickly, education of children, refrigeration in the house possibly even as well. So for drugs and food security. So, I mean, it all links to so many aspects of somebody's life if you can deliver that energy that is affordable to them, particularly in the developing countries. But I'd be interested in also what's your perspective on affordability in the richer countries, because that's also an issue too, isn't it?
No, it absolutely is. And again, I think we don't actually talk about that enough, but it's the difficulties in energy affordability puts a lot of poorer households in a really vulnerable spot. There's high rates of energy poverty in many advanced economies. Let's say there's a lot of energy poverty and people who are kind of living in that, on that edge between
slightly twilight world between just about able to afford it,
exactly,
but then maybe not the next month.
Exactly. Or people are making trade-offs between this basic need and affording their energy bill. But what's been interesting in a lot of the work that we're doing is looking at the ways that different kinds of policy design can make energy more affordable. So, for example, if you have a program that's really very specifically targeting lower income households to be able to, afford different kinds of efficiency upgrades, then that just having a more efficient system, not only does it have big gains for decarbonization, but it really has big impacts on energy bills. So what we're doing is we're really looking at kind of across different countries, and both in advanced and emerging and developing economies, to see what kinds of policy design and implementation can be most effective for people who are not able to access energy for a variety of reasons.
Who are you kind of working with? Because I mean, the IEA is obviously a large institution, relatively large institution, but there's a lot of private sector out there that can come into this, and they have foundations. I remember, I think it was last year at a meeting in Paris, this event called Change Now, there was somebody from Schneider Electric, where they got some foundation trying to deal with energy poverty. There's probably others out there. Do you interface with some of these people?
Well, we do. So there's a bunch of different ways. I mean, for the IEA, our primary interlocutors are energy ministries and energy ministers. We convene something called the Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transitions. It's made up of ministers from around the world, labor leaders, business leaders. We have indigenous representatives, youth. So we're really trying to have a very kind of representative group, and it's chaired by Teresa Ribera, who's the vice president of...
She's an old friend and a big fan of We Don't Have Time. We've had her on many times.
Teresa Ribera. And our other co-chair is the Brazilian Minister of Mines and Energy. And so with this group, we're really kind of putting forth policy recommendations, best practices on kind of a number of different areas, but all within this people-centered arena of really how do we make sure that these policies are really providing benefits. And I want to say too, like, really providing benefits in a way that's more equal, because what we see is there's this perception that sometimes is true, that only richer people are able to afford the benefits of clean energy transitions because you can buy an EV, or you can afford to retrofit your house, and so you're getting those gains, whether they're affordability gains or cleaner air, etc. And so it's something that we're again really looking at in terms of policy making, which is how are we able to think about policy design so that that these benefits are really more accessible to everyone.
Is there a kind of final dream, a sort of what an end game would look like? Would it be that every household in the world had a solar panel on the roof? I mean, that's probably a very simplistic way of thinking about it, but in the end, I mean, there are numbers out there, as we all know, how many people are living without energy access still. And then this other area that you're touching on as well, which is, well, you might have energy, but you can't really afford it all the time because you're on marginal incomes, or maybe if you're in a northerly climate, winter hits you very hard. I suppose there must be nice to find what the end game was. Maybe not tonight, not on this show, not tomorrow, but there must be a point at which we say it's done, right? Everyone's got energy, everyone can afford it, like education. I mean, the Sustainable Development Goals have targets. Maybe they will get revised at some moment. And it's every house with a solar panel. And a heat pump.
Well, I think, when we talk about clean energy transitions and we talk about, decarbonizing by, 2030, 2035, 2050, et cetera, I think really the definition of success of meeting clean energy goals or net zero goals has to also include really universal access. Because if we're not able to do that, if we're not able to ensure that all people can really afford and have access to energy, then we've kind of failed. And this is really a moment when there is a lot of structural change that's needed to think about how, whether we are, I mean, you brought up the example of, solar panels. So, thinking about different ways that, in different creative and innovative ways that people are able to have more access. This is the moment to do it. And so I think for me, in a way, that's the end game, is that, we need to think much more holistically about how these things go together. And the thing is, we can. And we do really see that. There's a lot of inspiring examples of where, I mean, I say inspiring, some of it feels quite wonky, right? Like when you're in the actual like policy design implementation, it's like, not super sexy, but actually what we see is like really interesting, positive outcomes when at the policy design stage, there's objectives that aren't just about kind of, really technical outcomes.
Yeah. And actually, the good news is that, I mean, something like a unit of solar, when I was writing about them in the 1990s, a unit of solar was like $50 a unit, right? It was unaffordable.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Except for the space shuttle, right? Right. And then suddenly we've seen the curves, whether it be wind or solar, other kinds of renewable energy, cheaper in many cases than fossil fuels.
Absolutely.
So this is the moment that maybe we could realize that dream of universal access for everybody everywhere. So fingers crossed.
Well, next when I see you in 10 years, 20 years, we'll see.
I won't be here in 20 years, but
you seem very spry.
Well, yes, maybe very spry. I have to work out how many World Cups have I got left. That's the way of working it out.
Yeah, really. Well,
Jane, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Good work, and very good work. Very important work. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're here at the International Energy Agency in Brussels, where they're talking about energy efficiency and how to actually, move further and faster with this particular theme and topic. And now I'm going to turn to two wonderful guests who have really something exciting to announce, which fits into this theme directly. I've got Anna Hall, who is Head of Public Affairs for the Energy Division of Alfa Laval, a very, very strong company on energy efficiency. That's amazing. And Christina Karlmark, who is Partnership Manager for We Don't Have Time. I think I know who they are. And it's great to have you here. So Anna, let's start with you. Can you tell me what it is that you want to announce or talk about and why?
Okay, so we are launching a learning initiative because we think, or we see that there's a big need to really interact and learn from one another. So we see how we need to get together with cities. That's going to be super important decision makers in the future, and also together with industry, because this is really an ecosystem where we need to join forces.
And why do you think, I need to ask you a question. Why do you think energy efficiency is so important? How could the world, or characterize how the world might save money, save emissions, whatever, if we really invested our efforts into this across the globe?
Because energy efficiency, that is really the first fuel. Energy efficiency, the solutions, they are really already here. It's ready to be implemented at scale and at speed. So if we're going to reach our targets by 2030, it's really the go-to solution, energy efficiency.
Right.
And with the cities, we see that they really have an important role in the future to be this facilitator. Because in the city, you find the industry, you find the buildings that is going to be heated and so forth. And actually, as much as 2/3 of the energy is consumed in a city. And we know the cities are growing. So if we can look on energy systems in the cities that we can make more efficient, there is a huge gain, both on, of course, making energy more affordable, of course, making energy more accessible and work with energy security. And also, if we can get this ecosystem going, for example, industry and data centers leaving waste heat to cities, we can also find a super nice business case and foster industrial competitiveness.
Right. Christina, what is We Don't Have Time's role in this, and what's your role in it? Maybe start with your role first and then start with We Don't Have Time.
My role is, I'm a partnership manager, so I work with our partners such as Alfa Laval all over the world, big and small companies and organizations. And the aim for We Don't Have Time is to spread climate action and climate solutions faster, so we transition faster. And then together with Alfa Laval, we realized that there are these fantastic energy saving solutions in some cities in the world that are not used in others. So what we looked at here is how can we use those actions, climate actions, and spread it, because that's what we do and We Don't Have Time. So then the question was, how do we do it? And that's when we came up with this learning lab idea.
Good. Now, there's another partner here that we have to talk about, and that is ICLEI, which is the Sustainable Cities Network, cities all around the world. There's a couple of big city networks, the C40, but ICLEI has many C40 members as well as some medium-sized cities too. So how did this go about? Somebody approached ICLEI and said you want to be in on this, right?
Yeah, so we've been talking with them for quite a long time, meeting up and seeing they are having the same agenda, working with energy efficiency at scale. And we also see that we can't work in silos anymore. We need to join forces and really be together and learn from each other as well. So, just look upon Europe, for example. There is waste heat of 2,800 terawatt hour. A number that maybe don't say so much, but that can heat the whole building stock and the tap water in Europe for a whole year.
Right.
So, of course, we need to really use this untapped opportunity because that is heat that just would be wasted otherwise. So if we can get the cities learning from each other, some cities are super good, some cities are really on a journey, and if we can then get cities through ICLEI that organize 2,500 cities and municipalities together with industry, we can really create a movement. And this learning lab then, that's a good platform to land in on and really share knowledge.
And we're starting on this now. What's the next step? What happens?
Well, the first thing is that we will interview mayors from a number of cities so they can showcase how they did it and what were the stumbling stones and what did they learn. And we will actually then put this on We Don't Have Time. It will be a series, so you subscribe to the series because it's a learning journey. And the first ones we will do in Bonn next week together with ICLEI and Alfa Laval, and then we will do some more at Climate Week New York and at COP30. So we will add voices and good examples throughout this year.
And will we continue into next year, or is it a 6-month project? What is our vision here? Or is it a pilot and we might go bigger later? Let's see how it goes, that kind of thing?
We have decided to go to COP30 this year, and then we will see.
Okay, all right. Super. Sounds a really good idea, and thank you very much indeed, Anna. Super.
Thank you
see
so
you
much.
As usual.
Yeah.
What a good idea.
Thank you, Nick.
Christina, very
Wonderful.
good idea. Great. Thank you very much. So we have another wonderful guest with us here in Brussels at the International Energy Agency's Energy Efficiency Conference, and we'd like to introduce Federico Barbieri, who is president and co-founder of the European Youth Energy Network. So, Federico, very nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Okay. So tell us, what is the European Youth Energy Network? It's a new one to me, so that's great. Should be a new one to the audience, I hope, and they will learn something, yeah? And what are you trying to accomplish?
Thank you. So first of all, if you don't consider yourself youth, please stay connected, because this is not just about a youth organization, but it's really about how young people can collaborate with intergovernmental agencies, with governments, and with industries. And I will tell you a bit what we want to become before we to say what we are. So the European Energy Network wants to become the largest young energy professional network in Europe. We want to create long-term and stable collaborations with governments, industries, and associations. And we want to create the space for young people so they can have a meaningful impact on their energy transition. Basically, we are a very youth organization in terms we are just 3 years old. We are non-profit, and we define ourselves as a think tank. And at the moment, we have a network of 25 member organizations, which are local or regional youth associations. Our team is composed of 60 volunteers from 30 different countries. And we work together, for example, with DG Energy, of the European Commission Director General for Energy, with the IEA, with IRENA as well. And we hope to add also We Don't Have Time to our list of collaborators.
Okay. Well, we're a little bit different to the International Renewable Energy Agency or the DG Energy, but we're very happy to get your message out, and we're very keen on climate action. So that's where our heart beats. And your background yourself, are you an energy specialist?
I'm an energy market consultant.
Okay.
So this is not my job. I have a daily job, and I have during the night. I feel like a bit of Batman. I have two identities: Bruce Wayne during the day and Batman during the night. And during the day, I focus on energy markets. and here in Brussels. And during the night, I focus on youth engagement, civic engagement, and how do we involve the population in the energy transition. So it's a people-centered transition.
So basically, I mean, you are, I mean, youth is an interesting term, isn't it? Some people think youth, in Britain, they think youth is like 16, right? And then you're an adult at 21. But I know in the UN system, youth is sort of up to 30 or so, maybe just slightly over, yeah.
For us, it's 1835.
Yeah, okay. And these are the people, the men and women, who are going to basically, in a sense, when people retire in the energy system, they're going to be the ones completely in charge, right? So their voices, their thoughts, what they decide is the right way forward with energy in their respective countries and communities is going to define, in a sense, largely how that energy mix is going to look in the coming years. And we need it to have a lower carbon footprint year by year, yeah?
Yes.
So do you think that your voice, and I say your voice as the Youth Energy Network, is starting to be heard in these areas where policies are decided?
Well, I think it's important to say something before, because before being heard, I mean, it's important that you have something to say, right? And that you made your research, that you consulted your data, because we don't want to go to conferences and say, look, we're youth, you need to include us just because we are different voices. Like, what we want to do is to train these young people on different topics. For energy efficiency is one of them. So they are empowered to bring their own opinion, but it's an informed opinion. Because I feel that now we have a lot of movements, like Fridays for Future, Extinction Rebellion, and they're there because they feel their voice is not heard. So the only way to be heard is to create a mass movement and scream as loud as they can. But we're trying to have a different approach, which is more a constructive approach. It takes more time because we need to build knowledge, we need to build trust. But I believe these two approaches are complementary. And so we are trying to be more the one that sits on the table and that help policymakers and companies in implementing more inclusive policies that includes youth and also other marginalized groups.
It's kind of an interesting time, is it not, for the energy transition, for the overall decarbonizing transition, because we've got a wind blowing from the United States, which with a certain amount of negativity about climate action, although I think a lot of companies in the US and a lot of states and cities are just carrying on, but keeping their heads down. But also in Europe, we have some populist politicians too, who seem to think that somehow transitioning to green energy is a crazy thing. You've got AfD in Deutschland, and in Britain we've got something called Reform, which is the right-wing party, and I know Italy has parties. I know they're all a bit different in some of the things they say and do. It's not just one voice, but this is an important moment to stand up for a clean energy transition, is it not? And it's a time to say we can do it, but we need the right policies and we need consistency. I think that's the key thing for many members of the private sector. We need consistency in the target setting.
Yes.
Any thoughts on that?
And I personally feel that we need to also go beyond policies. Unfortunately, we are in a world where there are a lot of entities, people that are trying to divide us. And I feel this is also the same for the energy transition and between renewables. As soon as they're trying really to distance people from the energy transition, saying this is useless, you're going to pay much more. And I think here is a bit the role of first governments and civil societies to bring people closer to the transition, to show to them what are the tangible benefits. Of course, people want to save money, but people also want to be involved in the decision making. Like, you cannot just put a wind turbine in my garden and hope that I'm okay with it. But you need to involve me. You need to say, okay, if we do this, then these are the benefits for your society, for your community. So it's really about giving people the ownership of the transition and not just making them feel there are policies that are raining down on them. And there is some long-term unclear benefits. So let's show them the short-term benefits. We know that there are long-term benefits, but we need to show the short-term benefits because that's how people make decisions and that's what drives people.
And because you're experts on energy, you can have a legitimate conversation with people from a position of knowledge, because we know there's a lot of misinformation goes around. I mean, I've seen it for years myself, but you see it popping up from time to time, like, oh, wind turbines kill large numbers of birds. Well, the reality is birds tend to be quite smart. If they see one of their mates killed by a wind turbine, they tend to avoid it after that, right? Or other things you see, like electric cars, for example, there's always images of them burning because of their batteries. But when you peel back that information, who actually posted that information? Where did it come from? Who has an interest in putting out misinformation, right? So your voices are important voices in this, because you can say, well, actually no, the reality is that most electric cars do not burn, and actually even petrol-powered cars, if they have a nasty crash, they burn too, mate.
They burn more. Like,
they burn more, right?
They burn more.
Yeah. So I mean, these are important discussions you can have at a local level, at a city level, at a national level, and maybe at an international level. I think it's important that your voice is heard.
Yeah, I feel sometimes in all political discussion there is some sort of inertia or some sort of cultural preconceptions we have. And what we notice as well, that connected to the discussion of creating divisions, I also feel that there's even more division, unfortunately, between younger and older generations. And sometimes we start this blame game where someone believes you're not listening us enough, or you're not, committing enough, you're not working enough. And I feel we need to go beyond that, and we need to go on to this important stage as young people with humility and say, okay, we know we're just kind of new in the sector. We are becoming experts, but expertise is built with years.
Yes.
Right? So the older we get and the more expert we become. But at the same time, the older we get, the more conservative we become. So
yes, and the older you get, you tend to rely on the information that you gathered maybe 30 years before to justify your arguments, right?
And usually, innovation happens when you do something completely different. So it's about recognizing the values that we bring as different generations, and trying to create a space where everybody can express their own opinion. And
I often find myself in arguments with older people. I'm an older person, but they say, "Oh, that renewable energy, it's so heavily subsidized." And you go, "Well, it's subsidized a bit in general, but do you know how much the fossil fuel industry is subsidized?" They go, "What? It's subsidized?" I go, "Yeah, every government's doing it. Look at the numbers, and it's even going up." I mean, then they don't know that because they think it's all. Why would you subsidize fossil fuels? It's hardly a startup, right? Anyway, so sorry, we've gone off track in terms of the question, but it's a good conversation.
Back to energy efficiency.
Yeah. So do you think through your network you can get more people out there to realize the importance not just of green energy, but of energy efficiency? I mean, when I was a little bit younger, they called it the Cinderella fuel,
Okay.
Cinderella, that character in
yes.
Yeah, she's the poor girl in the house. The Cinderella fuel, they would call it. Now I think they give it other names, but it was one that was always forgotten about. But we need it too, don't we? We need energy efficiency. Yeah.
Yes. So I think we need to make energy efficiency cool again.
Yeah.
It's a bit of the underdog sometimes. I feel it's the one that is mostly underestimated.
Yeah.
But I feel it's better to save 1 megawatt hour than to produce 1 megawatt hour more to meet the demand.
Yeah.
And I feel this is connected to how do we make it cool again. It's about ownership. Like something that I realized through my youth experience is the importance of involving young people and making feel that they have ownership on the project, or they can actually have do an action. Because there are, for example, most young people are renting apartments, and even if they would like to make energy efficiency measure, they can, because the decision stays on who owns the apartment.
Yeah.
So it's about what kind of policies can maybe support young people to push the owner to create to implement energy efficiency measures, and what role they can play in it. And here I would like to mention one project that we are very excited and we are very happy about. So it's called the Young Energy Consumer Project, and
Young
Energy Consumer Project.
Okay.
And we started by investigating how energy poverty affects young people, and we realized that there is absolutely no data on that. So we are running now, we're going to run the biggest survey ever done on energy poverty and energy efficiency on young people. We're going to interview 5,000 young people from 9 countries. And this will give us insights on their energy pattern, on their consumption pattern. And we're really targeting people that are actually young people that are actually energy poor. So I think this is something that, as I mentioned before, is about bringing data to policymakers and look, this is the situation, and then we can also provide suggestions. So I think this is also a bit our role in supporting the policies with data, with ideas.
Yeah. And energy poverty is not just in poorer countries. There's energy poverty in the middle of Brussels, for example. Yeah, so it's a north and a south issue. Yeah. And you said how many people you're going to survey in how many countries?
So our members base is 28 members organizations, so youth energy organizations in 15 different countries.
15 different countries, right.
It's always, but altogether, this network is around 3,000 young people.
Right.
So like just think about the power of mobilization that we can have by saying, okay, we make a project about energy efficiency, we send it to everyone, we say, okay, these are the policies that we know they work, and then they can use these policies to advocate on a local level, on a national level. So we are supporting.
And are you predominantly in the European countries, or do you have members in Africa as well and other places?
So we are called European Youth Energy Network. By Europe, we mean Europe continent. So we are not bounded by political.
Right.
Political.
So can go east.
It can go. But at the same time, there are other wonderful youth organizations around the globe, and they are already taking care of Africa, of Southeast Asia, of North America. So we are in good connection with those organizations, and we always meet up at the international conferences.
Right.
So it's a bit.
So should every government, when they go to these UN climate conferences, these COPs, bring a youth energy network delegate? Should they do that? Would that be a good idea?
I think they should do 2 things, because one, they should create a program internally. So there's someone that follows the policies and is someone that is able to speak on behalf of the government. But at the same time, they need to promote external independent youth organizations. So, and consult them. Right. This is the most important. It's not about bringing, but it's about consulting them, hearing what they say. And of course, I feel sometimes policymakers are underestimating the power of youth organizations, and because they live on a constant energy sobriety. We are really struck. I mean, we are really looking for new resources, new funding, new ideas. So we are in this constant status of let's use our resources as efficient as possible. And that's how I like, because we are very efficient as organizations.
Right.
And I think governments, companies can learn a lot from youth organization and vice versa.
Okay, one very last question, a quick response. How do you feel at this moment, with 5 years to go before we need to halve global greenhouse gas emissions, to give us a 50-50 chance of hitting net zero in 2050, that the governments are really responding to this challenge, or is it patchy? In other words, some governments are, some governments aren't. I mean, you know, what's your, because you're going to be inheriting the future, right? I won't be inheriting the future. Are you worried about climate change?
I mean, of course I'm worried. Of course, it's something that will affect our lives, and we don't even realize it because it's something that people underestimate. In terms of my feeling for the future, I know this is not the best moment because we have a lot of governments pulling away funding from renewables. But at the same time, I feel we need to stay positive. You know, one of the peculiarity of humanity is that whenever we face a challenge, we always find a solution. So I think what we just need is really, we need to go close to the, very close to the wall, to smash against the wall, then we will understand, okay.
Humans are better in a crisis than they are at long-term
Exactly,
planning.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay,
look, what we do in time of crisis is a bit like the student. I like this metaphor. How efficient do we become as students when deadline is approaching?
Oh yeah, well, brilliant. Yeah.
Like 300%.
Yeah.
And
most journalists wait for weeks to write this feature for a newspaper, and when they know they've got 5 minutes, then they do it, right? Exactly. But the good news is renewable energy is, doubling every 2.5 years globally. It's reached exponential growth. It's like the transistors in computers. Once they doubled, that was it. So, there's a lot to be optimistic about.
We're optimistic. We're not fast enough, but we can still accelerate.
Yeah. Good. Very nice to meet you. Best of luck with your work.
Thank you.
A pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So we're here at the International Energy Agency 10th Annual Energy Efficiency Conference. Another wonderful guest with us here in the We Don't Have Time studios. And she is Dominique Silva, who is Marketing Leader, Europe, Middle East and Africa for Train Technologies.
Yes.
Hello, Dominique.
Hi, Nick. Nice to see you.
Good. Nice to see you too. For anyone who may be unfamiliar with Train Technologies, briefly, what can you tell us about the company and how it relates to this theme of energy efficiency?
Of course. So Train Technology specializes in climate control technology and thermal management systems. The way I like to explain it to my family and friends is heating and cooling is everywhere, whether it's buildings, whether it's homes, whether it's required to transport foods and medicines, and we provide equipment and solutions to do that in a very efficient way, to link to your second question.
Yeah. So sustainability is, in a sense, at the heart of the company?
I would say it's not just the heart, it's our DNA. One thing that I'm really proud of is we were one of the first to make a really huge commitment around reducing our customers' emissions by 1 gigaton.
Right.
And that, to give you a sense, is equivalent to the annual emissions of UK, France, and Italy combined, right?
Wow.
So I'm pretty proud. I mean, we're here in Europe, right? We know how big those countries are. And I love that the focus for the company is really not just around our own operations, but how are we helping our customers, right, to increase their efficiency and reduce their need for fossil fuels?
Yeah. So I suppose probably, you make this equipment, that's correct, yes?
That is correct. So we
you have
design,
emissions,
manufacture.
you have emissions associated with that, and then you've got the emissions that your customers generate. And if you can get their emissions down,
yes,
then you've got a success with your targets, and they have a success with theirs.
You're completely right, Nick.
Yeah.
So we look at scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions,
Yep.
right? We don't just focus on the 3, we don't just focus on a 1. We
Yeah.
believe that you need to look at the whole thing to have an impact.
Yeah. I mean, you're a large company, and you span these various regions that we mentioned at the beginning, plus the USA. That's not your area, but that's something else. Do you see a lot of interesting innovation in this sector? I mean, are policies coming from UN climate conferences and dribbling and trickling down to national governments, creating a pull, a demand for the kinds of stuff you do?
Yeah, they're definitely creating some demand on the side of our customers, right? With new legislations coming in. We had the eco design in Europe kind of pushing for more energy efficient equipments as well. But what I think is really, really interesting is in the last years, this whole conversation around sustainability and energy efficiency is not just because we have to, because the government's told us, but there's actually a real business case to do it, right?
Yeah.
Our customers, by increasing their efficiency, are reducing their energy bill. And why would you not do that, right?
Yeah.
So it is creating, I would say, a positive, environment. But as a business that manufactures these types of equipment, we still need to make sure that it makes business sense for our customers and it impacts their bottom line.
Okay. Can I ask you one daft question? Because I just have to ask. So you're responsible for all these different regions. I can understand in the Middle East, for example, there must be a great demand for cooling.
Yep.
And there is some manufacturing. How is it in Africa? I'm just curious about how these technologies, are they percolating into that region, or is it very selective, or Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm just
so
curious.
naturally our footprint will be different depending on these different regions, and the demand and the need would be different as well. In Africa, it's really more about access to cooling
Right.
at this stage. So it's less about investing in very premium projects or products in this case, but really looking at how we can provide more access to cooling with sustainable solutions, right? So lower GWP refrigerants, would play a role here. And then it's also a lot about upskilling, those people in Africa, the companies in Africa that can help service those equipments as well.
Right. Okay. So we talked earlier before you came on our show, and I was intrigued about one suggestion that you made, which is tell us about the decarbonization of refrigerated transport logistics and kinetic energy recovery solutions. And I had to, I remember from my childhood, right? Kinetic energy at school. I looked it up. So it was William Thomson, later Lord Kelvin, who first used the term kinetic energy in around 1848. But he's not with us.
No,
right?
but I am.
But
So
you are,
maybe I
Dominic,
can
so
explain.
you can do it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your research there,
Okay.
Nick. I confess I just threw a lot of complicated words at you to make myself sound smarter. But no, in all reality, so this is actually an area and an innovation that I'm particularly excited about, because in this case, we're talking about an incumbent, right? A giant in the industry disrupting itself in a way. So let me just explain the why, right? So 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions are attributed to transportation of goods. And we only see an increase in demand for fresh food, for medicines, and temperature-controlled transport in particular. So that impact is going to continue to grow. That's a lot of movement, right? It's a lot of trucks and a lot of trailers going from one place to the other. Now, you told me, Nick, you're from Berlin, right? I'm from Brussels. One thing we have in common is traffic, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and in Brussels, we even have quite a few hills. So one thing that happens a lot when these drivers are moving all these goods is that they're going to be going up a lot of hills, down a lot of hills. They're going to be braking a lot. And this is the really interesting thing. Every time that happens, we have kinetic energy from the axle, which is being dissipated in the form of thermal energy, right? That's why the brakes
Heat
get hot.
from the-
Heat, exactly. So what our company thought was, hold on, I mean, heat is energy. So is there a way that we can harvest this and repurpose this energy, turn it into electrical power so that we can then power the actual refrigeration units, or the fridges, as some people call them, on these trucks. So this is the Thermo King axle power innovation, which we launched recently. And I'm really excited about it because it's been tested, and we've had customers, including South Africa,
right?
Which is where we had one of our first trials, that have really told us stories of how they didn't have to charge their fridge for 6 months, right? I drive an electric car. I can tell you I've never gone 6 months without having to charge it, right? So this is all really around the ability for us to harvest that kinetic energy, which is being dissipated into the thermal, convert it into a power by storing it in a battery and then using that to power. So
it's about thinking in systems, isn't it?
Exactly.
No longer thinking of just, it's a truck, it's a fridge.
Exactly.
They move
There's my
around.
engine.
Yeah.
Thinking about energy flows,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Energy is all around us. We're so used to just wasting it because no one knew better. And I think it's time for us to change that paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. So train technology is involved in both heating and cooling, so that we established that earlier. And the cooling challenge is really one of the, I was going to say it's one of the hot challenges right now, but that's kind of completely a misuse of words. But I mean, at the last, was it last or the conference, UN conference before, maybe it was Dubai, you got this tripling of renewables,
That's
this
right.
doubling of energy efficiency, and there was a cooling pledge as well. And I think they're all kind of connected in some way.
That is true.
Tell us what the challenge is, just for the listeners, why we need to find solutions to sustainable cooling.
Yeah, well, Nick, you probably know this better than me, but according to the United Nations Environmental Program, cooling is responsible for 20%, mechanical cooling actually is responsible for 20% of electricity consumption globally. But I want to look at this from another angle as well, which is the fact that we have close to 2 billion people today that don't even have access to sustainable cooling. And cooling should be a fundamental human right? It's a really hot day here in Brussels, and I've heard people complaining about the air conditioning. So that is, for me, essentially what the challenge is, which is there is still going to be a huge demand, growing demand for cooling, but we can't do that with just the old technology that we've had before, right? So
because we're going to get huge emissions, right?
Exactly, right?
Climate change fueling even more emissions.
Exactly. So I'm really glad you asked me this question, Nick, because when we talk about decarbonization of the HVAC sector, there's a lot of talk about electrification of heat, which is swap your boiler with a heat pump, and that's great, and I agree with that. But there are a lot of things that we can do on the cooling side as well to improve efficiency. Happy to talk you through those.
Well, briefly, there's new kinds of fluids, for example, you could use. There are other measures you could do.
Others, yeah. So I typically put it in 4 buckets, not to say it's just one, right? But I would say it could be a multitude. So the first one is, technology has evolved, right? We've got better compressor technology, heat exchanger technology. So as a result, cooling equipment, the efficiency has improved. I was a product manager for many years, so a big part of my job was developing new products. And I remember bringing, new chillers or air conditioners that were 20% more efficient than their legacy. And this is without anything too complicated. So that's the one, right? And we have a huge opportunity in the retrofit market of just installing more efficient equipment. Second bucket, you already alluded to that, and that's really transitioning to refrigerants that have a lower global warming potential. And I think what's really important about this transition, and little people often know this or think about it, is that these new refrigerants that we see coming out actually have better thermodynamic properties, right? So they're delivering more performance and consuming less energy. So that's another, side benefit. Third one is really all around digital and system level efficiency, right? We talked about it previously with the trucks, right? And the axle power and thinking of the system. So that's definitely one point. And I think the growth of AI and digital services is fueling that a lot. And then last one is really around heat recovery, right? So again, another thing that sometimes people don't think about, every time there's a cooling process, an air conditioner, a chiller, a byproduct of that is going to be heat, right? We're always rejecting heat to the atmosphere. So again, how can we capture that, harvest it, and repurpose it for other needs in the building?
Right. Interesting. No, it's a huge challenge, and it's great to know that your Trane Technologies is working on that. I suppose, one of the big challenges, of course, is how to get it to the people that need it. And they don't just get the old versions dumped on them. And that's meant to be something for governments to enforce under various rules and regulations that started at the UN, We're almost coming to the point where I have to get to the end of this, unfortunately, because we've been chatting so much, we've gone well past our time. But very last thing, building engagement of employees. Briefly, why is that important?
Well, innovation does not happen without an engaged workforce, right? So that's really important. We started this conversation, with sustainability being a part of our DNA. So our people need to believe in that as well. So there's a lot of things that we do, starting really at how we continuously communicate our strategy and what's working and customer stories, just so that every employee, and we have 45,000 of them globally, understands the impact, right, of what we do, and every job is a sustainability job. And then down to the more tactical things. For example, we have a crowdsourcing program, so every employee can at any time submit ideas related to how we make our products more efficient, how we eliminate plastics, right, from our factory. And we have a team that goes through and incubates those ideas. All the way to a couple of years ago, we launched the Sustainability Ambassador Network. So this is an employee-driven program where people who really have a passion become ambassadors in their region. They connect with like-minded people, share initiatives, and just amplify, right, a little bit that spirit.
Very nice.
So it's just part of who we are.
Yeah, we need ambassadors like that out in all communities so that they know that sometimes this misinformation that goes around about climate change or
Yeah.
about the need to do this is just countered by real people doing real jobs, not just politicians. Yeah.
That is so true, Nick.
Dominic, thank you so much for being with us, and best of luck with your work.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you.